good.
Actually, a lot of us
Okay.
have.
Very good. It is 6:02 on, June the 4th? And I'm going to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission, City of Rolling Wood, to order. And we'll start with roll call.
Jay Van Bavel,
Jeannie Nyer.
Jerry Fleming,
Dave Bench. Okay. And with that call to order, I just want to welcome our newest member of the commission, Jay Van Babel, who has had some experience working with the City of Rolling Wood in his role in the CRCRC, and was the principal author of changes that were made to the tree ordinance. And I want to welcome him, and I'm really, really pleased that he's with us.
thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, good. All right. Let's go to the, any public comments?
No public comments.
Okay, we'll move right to the consent agenda then. And do I have a motion with regard to the consent? Please.
I have one question about the minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to pull them up, but my computer's slow.
All right.
They were accurate as far as I could see, but they had a couple of grammatical errors. Does that matter?
Doesn't matter to me. I think as long as it's understandable.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to, I think if you want to share those with Michaela, I think she can make those changes.
Yeah, of course, I can definitely make those changes.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah.
right, super. Otherwise, I mean, they were accurate. So, okay, I move approval.
Perfect. Okay.
I second.
All right. And any further discussion? That's fine. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Moving along to the regular agenda. Discussion, we'll go right to item number 3, discussion and possible action on a recommendation for fence construction materials. This has been, we've been carrying this on our agenda for about 4 months. It was actually brought up by Mike Rhodes, who is regrettably not with us any longer. But it seemed like a pretty good thing, and I know that City Council has also expressed some interest in this particular topic. So I had asked in the last meeting if you would, go home and do a little homework on it, see, form a set of opinions around it. And I know that we've gotten some things here in the packet that we can look at. So with that in mind, I'm going to just briefly go over what I had submitted, okay? And what we have here is the current Rolling Wood fence code, which amounts to very little. It really only talks really about the front yard. But from the Rolling Wood Drainage Criteria Manual, there is a section that says all concrete shall be stained and or stamped concrete or veneered with rock, brick, steel, tile, or other material or method that is harmonious with the landscaping and design of improvements, which is a bit more, I don't know, elaborate in describing what can be done with fences and in keeping with trying to keep things harmonious. I like to see one part of the code match other parts of the code. And so I underlined that, and I wanted to call attention to it. If that felt like that was a good idea to include as far as what materials could be used, or at least how those materials could be treated, maybe that works. Now, there are other things here. City of Westlake Hills really doesn't say a whole lot about what the materials can be. All fences, especially in particular those built along streets on common property lines, shall be well maintained and pleasing to the eye. Fences shall be constructed so that both sides are finished and identical, so that the finished side is the exterior side, that is, the side facing adjacent lots and streets. All seems like good practice.
There's something missing from this, though. I just looked this up. Westlake Hills specifically prohibits chain link fences, especially 12-foot ones. But
You know, that certainly has come into play here recently, but it seems, I think I pulled this directly from their code, and they do, in the code that I saw, they did say chain link was okay. I know the
Westlake
12
Hills-
foot's an issue.
No, but chain link fences are also not allowed.
Okay.
6-foot chain fences are not allowed.
All right.
But, you know, we can look back at it. But number 9 on our code is no chain link fences.
Yeah.
So we're already prohibiting that.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that's confusing about the code here is it goes fences, A, B, and then B is front yard fences, and then there's 9 items underneath front yard fences. So
Are you talking about the Rollingwood one or the Westlake
the
one?
Rollingwood
The
one.
Rollingwood, yeah.
That's a little confusing. All 9 things pertain only to front yard fences. It just needs to be the organization of it.
Ornamental fence stops shall be designed.
Can I make a comment on the front yard fences?
You certainly may make a comment.
So Sarah Hudson, 2805 Rockaway. Rollingwood used to not allow front yard fences at all. And so when that part of the code was changed, there was a lot of P&Z involvement and city comments and input and back and forth and all that. So that's why there's lots of, that part of the code is much newer than the rest of it. And that's why there's so much limitations, because we had no front yard fences at all. And then the code was changed to allow them, but with a limit of 3 feet and with the 80% visibility through it, and with, you know, all of the other criteria that are in that, because it was something new that was being added as an allowable option.
Okay.
There should be, on the 1 through 9, there should be another heading there that says fences, fence materials, or fences in general.
Yeah, 'cause it looks like all of these are under the subtitle of front yard fences.
Right.
Yeah.
They are.
And
Which we can't have a wood finish fence for front.
right.
Right.
So are you saying that we need to have more clarification for the back and side yard fences? Rather than alter what's here for the front yard fences, because it's already been approved with a lot of work, then perhaps change the ordinance to give more specificity to back and side yard fences.
I mean, item C could be back and front yard fences.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's specific to the corner, though, corner lots.
Yeah, we almost need a new section.
Right.
For
Yeah.
fences in general,
Yeah,
not non-front yard fences.
correct. Or corner.
As I read through this, yeah, the first 9 or even 10 things there after B really do pertain only to the front yard fences. That's just the way that it is written. Hmm?
It's a little easier to see how this works in the actual Communicode. Like when you go look it up online, I think you took this and copied and pasted it, and when you do that, it aligns everything to the left.
Yeah.
So if you go and look, it's a little easier to read. Just
You're right. You're right. I could have indented it.
It's
Yeah.
perfectly fine, but
All right.
just like looking at this, it's daunting.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, some of this, I think, could be copied and pasted into a new section that is addressing side and rear fencing, because a lot of it is what I think the community wants in terms of materials.
And I think what it is, our charge is here, is to figure out what those things would be. I mean, yes,
Yeah,
a lot of it's the same, but some of it may not be.
right.
And then we're here to discuss, well, what is that?
Yeah, legal can organize it if we go through the concept. of what
Exactly.
we want on a regular fence.
Very good.
So
Okay.
the other items that's come up, so chain link fences is already prohibited,
Right.
and I don't think anybody's asking that to be
No.
put back in. And then the other thing that's been discussed is cinder block or
Right, that's,
brick.
Right.
And that isn't, Austin does not exclude cinder block fences.
Right.
And I think Westlake does not either. I could only find 2 places in Texas that prohibited cinder block fences.
Well, this is kind of why I wanted to call attention to the drainage criteria manual description, where all concrete shall be stained or stamped, which would include a cinder block fence. But what it says is, if you made some sort of a detention structure out of cinder block, you couldn't just leave it as cinder block. You need to do something to it, at least if it's exposed to the street or public view. Okay. So some of those words might fit in what it is. I don't personally have any problem with anybody having a cinder block fence, but you don't want to leave it as a cinder block fence. You want to make it a little more ornate or closer to the architectural style of wherever the house is.
right.
Yeah, somewhere in here, I think it was from one other code, and I wrote it down in a different place, but I think one of these had wood finished, I wrote down finished masonry,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a general term that could cover that. You know, reinforced concrete, decorative metal or steel, somebody I think had that.
And we did discuss this at a previous P and Z meeting when Mike Rhodes was here, and we talked about how we could word it so that it would, that the CMU would be attractive.
Right.
And it's a little difficult.
Yeah, I thought finished masonry is good, but somebody could point out, that I may not be, maybe I'm missing something. It seems like finished masonry would mean stucco, brick, whatever, something that's finished as opposed to cinder blocks, clearly or not.
Right.
Or painted,
Yeah.
would that be?
I think even painted cinder block is not terribly attractive.
I agree.
Oh, but I mean, if you say it needs to be
Finished,
finished,
painted,
Well,
paint is a
Okay.
finish.
yeah.
across the
I think
street
that came
here,
up when you talked about that.
just across the street here, I think they've done a really lovely job with their landscaping. And they have several terraced walls, you know, that are cast concrete, okay, poured concrete. And they painted it. And there was some discussion, I know, in a previous meeting as to whether or not paint would actually constitute a finish. And from my perspective, what they've done is just right, really nice.
They stuccoed that concrete.
Did they, well, it's like a colored paint too.
They stained it
Okay,
dark.
okay. Right across the street here,
Yeah,
yeah, on the corner.
yeah. I watched it and
And you can get stucco now, it's pre-finished in a certain color too, you don't have to go back and paint it.
Right,
They
right,
get
right.
painted though.
well,
Yeah,
the guys
You
I
can do
saw,
it either way, yeah.
yeah, they had 2 brushes and coats. They had a finished clear coat at the end. And then, yeah, it amazed me how well that came out looking. I wish the landscaper was in my place.
so
Well,
we,
there's a difference though between a concrete wall and a CMU wall with
Yeah.
the mortar lines. which
yeah,
look
yeah, that's
like-
actually quite stylish right now. Having the board lines going
Well,
across.
that's
the-
board form concrete.
Board form
as opposed
concrete,
to-
right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which I actually noted in here, I think in somewhere it said,
Like stamped.
oh yeah, well, one, I don't know what stained or stamped means, but I would add to that board form concrete because it's finished. Intentional
Yes,
modern design, yeah.
yes. So,
Do we know what stained or stamped concrete? I mean, I know what stained concrete is. What's stamped concrete?
well, there are stamped concrete driveways that you'll see. There are a number of them around Rollingwood.
Oh, where
I've
they
never
do
se-
that texture?
Where they do, it kind of looks like a faux slate or kind of a rock assembly, you know.
There's,
It looks quite real, actually, but I've never seen it done with a fence.
Yeah.
Jerry, what?
well, stamp board concrete, there's 2 flower beds on Edge Grove. If you're coming into town, that's on the right side, like the first.
Yeah, we have board form on our Rollingwood signs.
Yeah.
Right.
The only thing you could probably do to make it better is to have it, require it to be stained, because that doesn't appear to be stained. It's
Yeah.
just
I don't mind
raw,
it unstained, but yeah.
just raw. I think the intent was to eliminate raw exposed concrete.
CMU,
We-
and even concrete, I
We,
think.
we could make the exception, though, that board form concrete is actually,
Typically, that is raw and intended to be raw.
okay, yeah, typically it is raw.
Which I like. It's personal preference.
Yeah. But there is that house on Rollingwood Drive, I don't know the number, but it has it has like I think a brick retaining wall, and then underneath it to the curb is concrete and it's cracked. It's not attractive. I don't know if you know which one it is.
I know one on Wallace. I think it might be Shanti's daughter or son. I forget which one,
Uh-huh.
but they have some retaining, and that's board form concrete. I'm
And
pretty
that
sure.
looks nice, yeah.
If you made both CMU and concrete fences need to be finished, they could, if they really wanted that concrete look, they can stain it concrete color, I
Or
mean,
clear, I guess. Yeah.
or clear. I
But
mean,
it's kind of what's the point. But
Yeah, what's the point? I think
Yeah,
an
well,
exception for poured concrete is.
If we could,
Yeah.
I,
poured versus CMU,
Yeah.
prefabricated.
it seems to me that yes, right now, massive concrete, with brutalism is in terms of and this board form concrete that's been being used for, I guess, 10 or 15 years now is really very stylish. And I would hate to have to make somebody do something just for the sake of saying, well, we completed the task because the code says we have to do this. No real good came out of it other than I spent money to do something. So if we could, within whatever we're describing, if we want to say something like, well, cinder block walls need to have some sort of a coating or some sort of a decorative touches made to it, perfectly fine. And then we can back that up with some additional words about board form or whatever, to the extent that we can describe what people really are required to do. Is that fair?
Because there's also those popular ones that are probably a version of CMU where it's almost, sometimes you'll see kind of a Mexican tile where you can partially see through it. It's little blocks with some sort of pattern in there.
Oh, yeah, those things, yeah. I don't
Which is
even know what
probably
to-
a CMU
I don't even know what to think
product,
about that.
But looks very different than what we think of as just this plain old CMU.
And that's very mid-century.
Yeah, mid-century or,
And-
sometimes you
and-
see it with Spanish or.
And they have
Mexican
CMU
style.
that has a finished face on it. I don't know if it's pre-manufactured to look like something besides just your plain gray CMU, and they come in different colors and all kinds of stuff. I forget what they call it. Face.
Yeah, in fact,
CMU.
some people do this on buildings, which is not terrible either, and it's CMU.
More verbiage, something. So
But this has a definition, finished CMU,
finished, okay.
refers to concrete masonry units that have been processed to achieve a specific aesthetic. or
Well,
functional
I guess CMU is a really large term. And if we're talking about cinder block, that kind of closes it in a little bit. I mean, anything, any kind of formed concrete, block is CMU. Anything that comes out of a factory is formed concrete. That's CMU. whether, and some of it's decorative and some of it's just cinder block.
By cinder block, you just mean unfinished.
No, I mean, you know, those things that come out and they're, what, 14 by 7, and they have generally 3 or 4 holes in them, so that they have, you know,
Yeah.
that's cinder block, you know, to me.
I think
Well-
even decorative CMU is still cinder block. I don't think that is so restricted to just those rectangular
I think that, I
bricks.
think Tony had the right word with finished.
Yeah, I mean, there are defined finished CMU versus unfinished CMU. I'm sure you can get no arguments about it, but I mean, it's here on Google.
But if we have an understanding and we're zeroing in on a finished surface, that finished CMU is acceptable too. That's the gist.
I think so, based on what I'm
So
seeing here.
finished
Well,
exterior surface exposed to public view.
maybe we can get Jay to walk through his piece here, but let me just finish with, you know, I went to my favorite code, Aspen, Colorado, and they say almost nothing about it, which surprised me. I thought they would have a lot to say about it, but they don't.
It's covered
Um,
with snow.
They're pretty happy with just restricting it to wood, stone, wrought iron, concrete, metal, wire, or masonry. Chain link, plastic, vinyl, and synthetic fences are prohibited. That's it. Pretty clean. And then we can come back, circle back to this later, but there is a question, and I know this came up in a city council meeting here fairly recently, as to whether or not planting bushes close together constitutes a fence. You know, if you plant large bushes 3 or 4 feet apart and they grow in and they kind of hide your house from the public view and all this other stuff, does that in fact constitute a fence? And is there something we ought to be saying about it? So,
I vote no on that.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
would say that
how
it's
would
not
you
a fence.
specify how much they have to go together and,
Yeah,
Um,
I vote no too.
you would say that's not a fence,
no.
I would.
okay?
It's screening.
Okay. I think a public member is gonna,
Yes, Sarah Hudson again.
please.
I'm the one that brought that up, I believe. And then the issue is not to regulate the landscaping as much as to regulate where you can place that. Because especially on corner lots, where we have a restriction on side, like front and side fences, a fence has to be 15 feet from the curb on a corner lot on the side. And there are people placing shrubs close together like that, closer than the 15 feet, and so it's a visibility issue for street clearance.
Well, we have code around the corners about landscaping specifically.
15 feet just from the corner, but it doesn't, then we have people planting them in the right of way, where that gets to be an issue, and also, you know, visibility as you're approaching an intersection when the stuff is, you know, right up 3 or 4 feet from the curb. That still
I
causes
thought our code was very specific around the corners as to where you can't be.
15
to
feet
create
from the
that
corner,
visibility.
but not all the way down your
Right,
lot,
right.
and not next to your driveway. Right, we have limits on how close you can have something placed on a side, towards the street on an interior, property line also, because backing out of driveways, if you have shrubs that are going all the way up to the curb, you can't see coming out of the driveway. And so that was the reason.
We do have rules around that, you said?
For a fence, you can't have a
For a
fence
fence,
any
yeah.
closer than 15
for
feet,
shrubs.
15 feet from the curb. But if a shrub is serving the same kind of purpose of blocking visibility, then you are blocking visibility for people getting in and out of their driveways and people approaching those driveways. If you can't see if somebody's coming out, or a kid on an e-bike is coming scooting out of the driveway too. So it's it's a public safety issue, so.
So you're saying you, for interior lots where there's a driveway right next to the boundary line,
Right.
property line, the fence can only come within 15 feet of the curb,
Mhm.
but you can build a,
We got no
a
restriction,
shrubbery.
we got no restriction on shrubbery, right?
Yeah, and so you're proposing a restriction on shrubbery up to the curb.
Or a height limit on it, so it doesn't block visibility.
Eh.
Right.
Would that,
Yeah, I think,
I'm-
go ahead, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I totally understand what you're talking about, and I think we do need to address that, but would that be under fencing, or would that be under landscaping and
We
some-
don't have a landscaping ordinance,
We don't?
no.
Oh.
Could we expand around the visibility around corners, add it into there maybe?
Yeah,
I do think that most shrubbery, I mean, there's certainly a scenario where you could have very limited visibility. For the most part, most shrubbery, you're gonna be able to see through sun. Now, an e-bike kid who blows out without looking either way, I'm not sure if there's shrubs or not, if that's gonna be a problem, and is a problem.
Oh, no, and I know exactly what you're talking about. We had one right by our house by our driveway that I personally planted, and it was little, and it grew, and then it blocked all the visibility, and now we've torn it all down. But
Yeah.
we replaced it with grass. I mean, it is a hazard,
Right.
but,
Well, I think it may have the potential for be a hazard, but not in all cases. You know, I've got shrubbery up against, close to my curb, and I wouldn't wanna cut it down. And it's been there for 30-plus years. So I think we need to have analyze just exactly in what case, how prevalent it is before we start putting restrictions globally everywhere.
okay, why don't we save that particular thing for a different discussion, okay? We'll get back to, I think we've established that it is not a fence. Shrubs are not a fence, so therefore we'll take that and we'll do something else with that later on, all right? So now I'm gonna invite Jay to take us through some of his observations from different places.
I've mentioned most of them. San Antonio has no prohibitions against cinder block. They call it concrete block or precast concrete panels. Those are allowed. And then, Leander has no prohibitions against cinder block. I only found 2 communities in Texas doing my limited search. It's Paris, Texas, and of all places, Texas City, Texas, that doesn't allow cinder block fences.
Probably the places where there was a lot of it going on, and they decided we don't want this anymore.
Well,
I'm sorry, San Antonio allows cinder block if it meets durability and aesthetic standards.
right.
right. Which we're not allowed to do. We don't do aesthetic standards. So, I served time in Midland, 6 years, and cinder block fences they actually call them cement fences there in Midland, and they're ubiquitous, they're everywhere. Almost everybody has one, and the reason is because it's such a windy place that wooden fences don't last more than a few years, if that, because they just get torn apart by the dry wind. And so you end up replacing them every 5 years instead of maybe 10 or 15 like most places you can. So cinder block fences are everywhere, and they just look like cinder block fences. They're pretty ugly, but everybody's used to them. Everybody's got them. Some of them will have a bullnose on the top of them to kind of soften the top so that it looks okay, I guess. But nobody has ever pushed anyone to stucco them or put any kind of exterior treatment to them. I don't think that's what we're looking for here, but I do notice that it is getting windier around here. I don't know if anybody else has, but it might actually start making sense for more concrete kinds of structures if you're really interested in doing a fence. So I would like to get into more specificity into what is required to coat something or not. I mean, I guess we're okay with wood fences. We've established already how high fences can be. We know where they're allowed to be. And we now, what can they be made of? Well, they can be made of wood, they can be made of steel, I guess, they may of wrought iron. Does anybody have any other kinds of issues with materials that could be? My daughter's backyard has a fence from the backyard neighbor had put up. And it is a corrugated metal fence that is framed in like a cedar. I don't think it's so ugly, but she does. If somebody put that up here, would that be okay? No? You wouldn't like that?
I wouldn't like it.
Okay.
I wouldn't like looking at it from my house. I mean, I wouldn't want my neighbor to have it, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Okay.
And I do have one concern about the CMU. I mean, I don't think anybody here doesn't want CMU. They just want it finished nicely.
Right.
But I'm not sure that painting is a great idea because it can peel off and it can look awful.
Okay.
So it needs to be a finish that is durable, that like a stain finish, you know, it lasts a lot better than painting, you know, because it does permeate the concrete. But I don't know.
We do say all fences shall be maintained in good condition.
Yeah, but is anybody
Yeah.
actually?
I don't know, a neighbor could complain if there's.
Well, if the
paint
neighbor
off, I
complains, then
suppose,
you've got,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm still confused though. I pulled up the code here and, you know, this whole list, B, front yard fence, numbers 1 through 10 appear in the code to only apply to front yard fences.
That's true.
And then we have the corner lot fence and there's really not much else in here about a regular fence.
No, there's not.
Yeah.
We don't have. We,
So like one thing that jumped out at
I
me,
guess our
didn't
fence
realize it
height
was
piece
all-
hasn't
yeah.
gotten into the code yet. You know, what we had just passed here a couple of months ago, I guess it's
Right.
not in,
I guess not.
but
Yeah, at first I was flagging, I was like, I don't like this thing about having the fence components on the interior of the fence, but now I see that only applies to a front yard fence, so I agree with that.
so, okay. So it sounds like you're okay with concrete fence, provided there's a durable exterior coating on it that brings them into some sort of a,
Well, CMU,
I like.
not poured
I
concrete.
still
Poured
think,
concrete can be raw.
poured concrete, okay?
I still think finished CMU, and then we could add something in there that says, you know, paint on CMU does not in and of itself constitute a finish.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
because they're defined, if you look online and Google finished concrete, there's a capital F, or finished CMU, there's a capital F, and it has pictures of what finished CMU is.
Mhm. Okay. All right.
And I think we could, I mean, I don't know why not to add some of the stuff from Aspen, you know, no plastic, no whatever their other ones. were.
Yeah,
You
yeah, we
May as
could do
well add
that.
that, right?
Yeah.
To be clear.
You know, it's interesting because I think that some of these material restrictions might be better found in HOAs rather than cities. Like Rob Roy or,
Right.
you know, Travis Country, we had a property down there, a rental property, and they were very restrictive about a lot of things. And I think HOAs actually can have more definition to them than
I
municipal.
think the state law took some of that away, or not for an HOA, just for cities.
For fencing?
Stuff in general, I mean, I know we can't limit, or we can't put restrictions around
Yeah, like
the
material.
masonry on the.
Yeah, masonry, but fences aren't part of that,
Yeah.
so we can do that.
But did they kind of take away some of that power from HOAs like they did with cities as well?
No.
So an HOA can still regulate.
Yeah,
the-
HOAs, deed restrictions, things
Yeah.
like that.
But we don't want to be an HOA, do we?
No, I'm not saying
Yeah,
we wanna be
yeah.
in nature, I'm just saying
I-
we might be able to get some better definitions
Okay.
of finished CMU or something like that.
So I just want to ask him about poured concrete fences. You'd be okay with those being unfinished,
Yeah, most of them look pretty good.
facing your neighbors?
Yeah,
That's what our city signs are, you know.
Okay, so they can always finish it if they really don't like it, right?
Right, or you have, I mean, all my fences have two fences, you know, my fence and the neighbor's fence.
Okay, but if
We
there
don't
was a
necessarily share a fence.
poured concrete fence on your neighbor's yard, you know, and it's raw concrete facing you, I can see how some people might not like that. But you could finish it, but you'd have to have your neighbor's permission to do it.
Right, or you could build your own wood fence in front of
You
it.
could put up another fence, yeah.
so,
Most of them are.
what do we do?
tall. Most of
Okay.
them are more,
we, it would be great if we could get at least some words into some sort of a code format, and we could look at it and say, yeah, that's it, or that's not it. But I think that what we ought to at least say here, what we think is allowed, okay? And then try to get that spun into code, and then we
Yeah,
get another
legal can
look
do
at
the
it.
code, right, if we get
Right,
the concepts
give it the
of what we
legal,
want, yeah.
say, okay, so, I'm gonna, okay, fences can be constructed of wood, correct, good. Wrought stone, wrought iron, concrete, we won't say anything about it yet, metal, or masonry. I'm gonna take wire out of that. Wire doesn't feel right.
Well, I will say, there are some wire fences in front yard because it has to be, you know, you have to have visibility, so I've got a house a few doors down from me that has a really nice, I guess you would call it wire, you know. It's almost mesh-like, but probably little wires. It looks nice, but I don't know how I picture that on a big fence. I'm not sure anybody would, it'd be super expensive, I'm sure.
Kinda smells like chain link, but
It's doesn't look.
it's not though, huh?
It's almost, it's more like mesh than chain link where you've got 2 inch.
Okay,
and there's one on Ashworth that's very attractive, and it's sort of, I don't know what it is.
so you would say that wire is okay?
I don't know, cause I don't know how many versions of that there are, so.
Okay, but
it's-
okay, for sake of argument, let's go with it. It's there. Wire or masonry.
What,
And
what
then,
are you reading?
That's
I'm reading
Aspen.
this is actually Aspen's code.
Oh, Aspen's code,
Yep,
okay,
okay.
all right, okay.
And then chain link, plastic, vinyl, or synthetic fences are prohibited. Everybody good with that? Now we can get into specifics about concrete.
Well, and that chain link, plastic, vinyl, or corrugated metal are prohibited.
Okay, okay,
Yes,
corrugated metal,
corrugated.
very good. Are we capturing this, or do I need to write this down, or I'm gonna turn this into a motion here in a minute, all right? Okay,
So corrugated metal, no, but metal panels, steel panels. I think is okay.
okay. I'm gonna make a motion, okay, that fences shall be constructed of wood, stone, wrought iron, concrete, metal, wire, or masonry. However, chain link, plastic, vinyl, or corrugated metal and synthetic fences are prohibited. Okay? That's my motion.
What about
We'll expand.
CMU?
That is I think that fits into the
Masonry, or concrete, yeah.
concrete or masonry. I think it fits into that.
Then it's allowed.
It's allowed, okay?
Okay.
We're gonna talk some more about it in a minute,
Okay.
okay? All right? So that's my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Got a motion, second. Any further discussion?
Well, just if it's past saying concrete, that's open to interpretation to.
Okay, we're gonna get interpretate, we're gonna put some addendums here.
Okay.
Now or
We're gonna,
after
yes,
we
we're gonna
pass
do it right now. If we want to, we can add it to this motion.
It might be better.
I would.
You want like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So I take away my second.
that's fine, okay, that's fine. Okay, so, we've got a motion, who wants to amend it? What would you like to see happen?
I'll take a stab at it. I would amend it to include, under allowed, cinder block or CMU, you could say cinder block or CMU fences are allowed if they are finished by stucco.
I would maybe say capital F, finished CMU, as opposed to that are finished.
Okay.
It seems like that's sort of a different.
Do you have to specify
Material.
what constitutes a finish? then?
No, there's apparently different kinds of finish, but all of them are, intended to make
Okay.
it look good.
Okay.
Which not everybody would agree with, but
Okay.
I personally would say finished, and I would add, paint alone does not constitute a finish on. a
Okay,
finished
so,
CMU on a
okay,
finished
so we
CMU.
have an amendment that says it's finished, CMU.
Should we try to come up with it before we even make the motion, whether, as opposed to amending and all that?
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to drive this to something that, can actually be scripted down.
Well, then you could move concrete to, you could put CMU in the not allowed unless they are finished.
Or you could leave concrete and say, as it relates to concrete, prefabricated CMU has these restrictions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in in the allowed part.
Right?
Okay.
Or as a separate
I was-
sentence following the
And
line.
I do like what you put in here, Dave, about the stormwater detention and says, instead of all concrete, we just say all CMU shall be stained and or veneered with rock, brick, steel, tile, or other material. And I would include stucco in there, or other material that is harmonious with the landscaping and design of it.
Then why don't we change, you'd pull concrete out and change that with CMU?
Yeah,
Because concrete then would be allowed, CMU would be allowed with this provision. And I would call that a friendly amendment.
I do understand your concern about the concrete walls. It is very attractive, a lot of these concrete walls, but I do think that poured concrete isn't attractive if it's above a certain height.
I think you're very unlikely to see much of that. We may still want to restrict it, but if you did your entire fence in board form concrete, that
At 8 feet, that would not necessarily
it
be
may not look
attractive.
good, and it would be. I don't
It
know.
would look like a
It might
prison.
be six figures.
Yeah.
by the time you're done.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
Michaela?
I would just ask that if you guys are going to make a lot of changes, it doesn't seem like you guys are quite ready for a motion yet. So if you're going to continue to make these changes, which is great, you guys are welcome to do that. But I would just ask that you rescind your motion.
Okay.
And then once you guys have it already, just for the minutes, just so they're clear and stuff. But
We can,
I think we were close, though.
we were pretty
So,
close.
so I think you're pretty close. I think my recommendation, for what it's worth, would be to take each type of construction material separately. So I think wood being a permitted use, perhaps not an engineered wood or manufactured wood like OSB might not make an ideal fence. So perhaps we might want to go material by material and decide what types of wood would be acceptable, what types of masonry things would be acceptable, and that type of thing.
Ah,
And if you're going to be using wood, would you require it be treated, or would you allow something like untreated
okay,
pine?
so.
So I think there's probably a lot of more, the more you dig in. So if you make motion per type of material, it might be easier to wrap our heads around, certainly from
Okay.
here to memorialize.
All right, well, I think you just extended the length of this meeting by about half an hour.
I think,
Okay, so, and that's kind of where not quite to that extent, but that's kind of where I wanted to go, was to have a general statement about what's allowed and what's not allowed, and then get into more specifics about those things that are allowed. And which was my idea of having separate motions for each of those things. Because I don't know that we can do a motion that has everything that Alan had just said.
Well, and we don't have to have everything, it's gonna come back. And
It will come back.
And we'll have it more defined in
But-
front of us.
Right, but if we can do this in kind of a bite-sized fashion, then I think we can get a product out that can actually be turned into code, and then we can look at it and say, well, yeah, that's it, or that's not it, or let's change it. So I have not rescinded my motion yet.
I would ask you just to restate your motion.
Okay. So I'm going to do that, all right? And then we can talk about the individual items as required, all right? So I'm going to restate the motion that fences shall be constructed of wood, stone, wrought iron, concrete, metal, wire, or masonry, chain link, plastic, vinyl, or synthetic fences and corrugated metal fences are prohibited. Okay? Going back up here. All concrete, or all CMU, shall be stained and or stamped concrete or veneered with rock, brick, steel, towel, or other material or method that is harmonious with the landscaping and design of improvements. That's the motion. We'll do other materials separately.
I second the motion.
Second that motion, okay. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any additional discussion on this particular set?
Did you want to add stucco specifically as a finish that can be used?
Let's see.
I think it should be.
We'll add stucco to it,
Friendly
Thank you,
amendment.
because I thought so
Okay.
too.
okay?
And we would be okay with CMU that's just stained?
No,
No,
we're gonna get to that.
Okay, we're ready for that.
we, I think that what it's saying is it's stained concrete, not stained CMU. That would be the coating or the cladding.
Well, should we say all poured concrete shall be stained and or stamped,
How,
or just wait?
how about if I restate that second part? How about all CMU shall be clad in stamped or stained concrete or veneered with rock, brick, steel, towel, or other material?
Stucco.
Would you go with that?
And stucco.
Stucco.
Add
And stucco, thank you, stucco. Are we good with
I
that?
don't know about tile. Tile.
Oh, yeah, why not?
I just can't picture a tile
Yeah,
fence.
I've seen some pretty attractive tile fences, yeah.
Well, that would be a method, a material that is harmonious.
Yeah,
Could be defined as that.
yeah.
Is that motion already been seconded?
Yeah, it's a good question. A motion was seconded, but I restated the second part of it, so that has not been seconded.
Then I second that.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the ayes carry, what, 5-0. Now, we can talk about other materials. Is there something we want to say about a wood fence?
Is there any type of wood we do not want a fence made of? Maybe that's the
I think
easiest way
that
to do it.
makes
I can't
sense.
think of one. Googling it looks like people use everything.
I mean, most people cedar or redwood, which is pretty expensive.
I'm just concerned if we start getting too specific about each material. Other cities don't do that. And the state code does say you cannot limit materials, but they think it won't apply to fences. But that doesn't mean it absolutely doesn't legally apply to fences. And if we start getting into that many specific prohibitions, I
Well-
personally would leave it as stated.
Okay.
I'd like the council to reply to that point.
So it's not specific in state law, but most cities, if not almost all of them, view fences separately, and so they do regulate material on that, and that has yet to be taken as a court case. So.
Yeah. The law states what's constructed or renovated for a residence or commercial building. And fence is not needed to be constructed with a building. So building-merely light fixtures, anything that's mounted to a building is under that state law. Driveways, outdoors, stuff, it does not apply.
I just wonder why other municipalities like Austin and Westlake make no such restrictions specific, like the wood, here's 5 kinds of woods you can use.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
That Westlake and Austin don't make any restrictions on the type of wood fence that you can put up. It just allows wood fences.
That's fine. My point was,
Really,
you're
I just think
referring
we're
to
really
the-
gonna get into the weeds.
well, no, I was just want to clarify that we understand what the state statute is on
Yeah.
what
I
building
understand that.
materials are prohibited. And that they apply only to building mounted,
I understand that
items.
part.
okay, so.
All right. Okay, I think Jay says.
I don't have anything I wanna eliminate from wood, just plain old wood's fine with me.
Okay, good. All right.
Same with
any-
stone, I wanna get into what kind of stone you can use.
Or brick,
Okay,
and we actually do have tile in there,
yeah, tile's fine.
and, oh, wait, that's on the added part, never mind, I'm sorry, let me go back down to the wood, stone, wrought iron, concrete, metal, wire, or masonry.
We already said chain link's not allowed, so it takes care of that.
The only question I had was one that I was talking to Jerry about earlier. And we have some here. I'm not sure they'd be considered fencing, but there's something. They're metal, it's like that big bullnose metal, the open square.
Oh, that you use for concrete,
Well, they're
reinforcement?
Yeah, well, it's wire, basically.
yeah, it's wire. Instead of using
And-
rebar, you use that wire, yeah.
But they're built in such a way that they go up and across, and inside it's filled with rocks.
Gabion wall.
Oh, okay.
Gabion,
Gabion,
yeah. So is that going to be permitted as a?
I was just looking at that, I was looking at other kind of fences that we would wanna,
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's rock, it's stone.
it is
So-
stone.
And we had,
And,
the
and
motion
wire's okay,
included
and
wire,
wire's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so I guess it's okay. I mean, it can be.
I'm personally okay with those. I think, again, you're probably not likely to have
Too
an
many.
entire property.
Right.
Most people wanna use that and board form concrete as an accent, as opposed to a primary.
It's a good question, though. Good point.
And I assume that these fences made from recycled plastic that look like wood, they're prohibited, they would be prohibited, right?
Because they're synthetic.
They're synthetic or plastic.
That is correct.
Yeah, somebody could probably make the argument that'd be a better one to use for longevity, but I've not, that's also really expensive. Maybe that's part of the reason, but I haven't seen people do that for fences, do it for decks a lot.
Why don't we leave it as it is and we'll just, yeah, we're all right. If
Well,
there's-
I agree with Tony. I think we should just and with you, I think we should leave it as is
Okay,
and not get too much into the weeds,
all right. We don't need a motion on that.
because it's already passed, right?
If anybody has anything that they want to get more specific on, here's the time to say it.
The only one that I think you could potentially is concrete. Do we need to get Do we have all that covered?
I think we do have it covered. All right. Then I'm going to move on to another agenda item. We're off of this. We all right, Michaela?
Yes, sir.
Very good, thank you. We have some citizens who have just showed up on regular agenda item number 5, and I would like to change the order of things so that they have an opportunity to address us, and we can move through that. So, I'm going to go to item 5, discussion and possible action on installation of a valley gutter at the intersection of Vale Street and Bettis Boulevard or other water diversion structures. Is there anybody here in the public who wants to speak to that item?
Well, good evening, committee members. Thank you for hosting us this evening.
Will you state your name and?
Yeah, sure. My name is Nicholas Tice. I live at 305 Vale Street.
Very good.
And yeah, so we have a bit of an issue right now. Well, we have ever since we moved in, actually, but 5 years ago. During heavy rainstorms, the gutter in front of our home overflows, and it seems to be getting worse. There was a very heavy storm last month where the rain actually the flow went right to our front door, and our doormat was actually like floating. If the rain had not subsided, I think our house would have flooded. We would have been inundated. The issue is the water comes down Bettis, and instead of continuing across Vale and going down Bettis, it kind of takes this strange sort of loop, just the way the road is sloped. It pulls right in front of our house, and it can't get around Bettis soon enough. It gets too high, flows down, sort of trashes our yard, and then encroaches towards our front door. And yeah, I believe there should be a video and maybe a diagram of what I'm referring to there.
Does it go over the curb itself or your driveway apron?
No, it goes over the curb.
The
Yeah,
4-inch curb?
yeah, it goes over the curb.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no driveway in that area.
Right.
So, it doesn't happen every storm, but during heavy storms, which, as you know, happen, several times a year, it overflows that curb.
And we do have the video in our packet, don't we, Michaela?
No, it is not in the packet. The videos aren't able to be in the packet since
Okay.
the packets are usually printed,
Okay.
but it was forwarded to
It
all
was
members.
yeah, we got it in an email. Did you get a chance to look?
Yeah, I looked at
Okay,
it.
everybody had
Pretty
seen it,
impressive.
okay,
I didn't see the video.
okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we have no strong feelings about how the problem gets solved. We're
Right.
just sort of here to present that we do have a problem, and we'll leave it up to
Okay.
the city council,
All right.
P&Z, and the engineering firm to sort of figure out the best
How many
solution.
years have you been in that house?
5 years.
And has it occurred before this last time?
Yes, it has. It has. It seems to be happening a bit more frequently. I'm not sure if that's the storms are getting worse, or we have had some a lot of new construction around us as well. But it could have just been a freak rainstorm also.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Tice?
So 305 Vale,
Yes, that's right.
so is that on the east side,
Uh,
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
Zilker side?
On the Zilker side, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, there's.
Right, oh, okay.
That's the green belt on the bottom right there.
Okay.
Any other questions? I'm happy to get back
Very
up if
good.
questions.
Thank
come
you.
up. Okay.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, this came up before city council here in the last city council session, and there was a bit of discussion, and the recommendation from city council was at that time to conduct an engineering study for this piece of property, and for the intersection, okay, and make a determination as to what's the best way to handle this is. I'd gone back and looked at the video to see what P&Z's role in all this was, and I found none. So, what I would move is that we endorse city council's recommendation to do an engineering study for the intersection and leave it at that.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All, okay,
Discussion.
any additional discussion?
Are we gonna be more specific about what that engineering study we think should entail? Should it include how any solution would affect other neighbors, or just that intersection, or, I mean,
I think that would be up to city council.
okay.
It's there.
Well, let's see. Okay, okay, let's,
I
let's,
wouldn't
let's,
mind adding that, yeah.
yeah, let's investigate that, okay. So, we have a letter that came to us from a neighbor, okay, and it expresses a number of concerns. One of them being whether we have a role in this.
Right.
And for the record, what P and Z does is primarily around Section 107 of the Building Code. We have a lot of latitude to work with that. With regard to plating and so on, we have a lot to do with that, but we don't have much else unless City Council asks us to do something. And when they ask us to do something, we respond. And so that's how I was treating this, as something that we were being asked to look at. I know our opinions are sometimes welcome, so this might be one of them. One of those times. So, would you say a little more, Jay?
And I was gonna say too, should we ask Sarah what city council would like from us in this regard? If they had any specific thoughts?
That's fair.
So, Sarah Hudson again. So the way I had worded it on the one sheet was forwarded to P and Z for input if needed.
No, you didn't
And
hear
so-
that. You gotta, I'm sorry, can you speak clearer or louder? Or slower?
Is the mic on?
Okay.
Okay. On the one sheet, I said I wanted to discuss this and then forward it to P and Z for action if, or input if needed. So I didn't know if, when I wrote that up, if this was something that needed to come to P and Z or not. So that was not my decision to put it on the agenda. And so if that's not something that you all have to provide input on, then we don't need any input.
But I think the city council was asking for us to give some input on
They
it.
did not specifically, Jay.
No.
I went back and looked, and no, they don't ask. We find ourselves here with a little additional agenda item that was probably didn't need to be scheduled. But since it's there, and because we have citizens here who have been good enough to express their concerns, I wanted to make sure that we did air it.
On the first sheet, it says action requested to discuss and consider various options and forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission for input if needed.
Well,
They're
that first
asking
page
us-
is for city council.
That
That is my page from
that
the
was-
city
that was-
council packet
yeah.
that just got put in there, so that,
Okay, I'm a newbie here.
That's,
so-
Yeah.
that's the one pager that accompanied the agenda item for city council.
right.
Okay? And we don't have, as I say, going through the video to see what city council was saying, they made the recommendation about the engineering study. They did not request additional help from P and Z. But for whatever reason, it ended up on our agenda anyway.
Well, I just like to say that we are sensitive to our citizens' concerns and cares, and we certainly don't mind listening and seeing what we can do to help. This drainage issue is really the preview of our city engineer, who is a civil engineer. And this is right up his alley to address. He's done drainage studies all over the city, and projects are already underway in some places. So it shouldn't take him very long to zero in on the problems and the ramifications of what can be done. And so I would encourage the city council to engage the city engineer to address the issue.
Can we request or provide the engineer with information that other citizens have written? I mean,
No, I would say that's up to staff.
Yeah, I don't
think
know
they
that, I
specifically
don't know
asked
that
for
the
that.
letter to P and Z got shared outside of P and Z. Can you tell me, Michaela, did that letter go anywhere else besides P and Z? The one from the concerned neighbor?
It's on the website as part of.
Oh, okay, it's in our packet.
Yes.
Okay, if
Yeah.
it's in our packet, then it's,
P and Z, and then, the resident also requested that it be in the packet for this meeting.
okay.
So I'm wondering if the concerns should at least be made known to the engineer.
I think that was specifically requested in one of the letters.
Yeah.
Yeah. And-
I would
It
agree
should be,
with that.
yeah, certainly, you would think it would be, yeah.
Yeah.
But I would think that would be automatic.
Okay, well, that's good.
All
I
right.
just want to make sure that the engineer is aware that there are concerns.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and the possibility of an amendment, I don't know. Is that,
I would amend it to say, you know, if we're making a motion, amend it to say to, you know, address and incorporate, you know, impacts of a solution to other neighboring properties.
okay, I can accept that amendment. We good with that? All right, so we have,
And I would second that.
you'd second that? Okay, that's fine. Any additional discussion? All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? That's it. Thank you. Okay. Mhm.
We hope your problem gets solved.
Yeah, it's a pretty
We have-
nasty
yes.
video.
All right, moving along here to regular agenda item number 4. This is gonna be a fun one. Discussion and possible action on addressing setback orientation for lots with limited street frontage. And, you have in your packet there, several points of discussion. It looks like there are 5 lots that have been identified within Rowanwood that are,
Now, some of the, like the one that's on Christie that was, I mean,
yeah,
what's the requested action? Because, I mean, it's already built.
There,
okay,
so can I explain?
Sure.
okay,
This-
by all means.
Okay, so Sarah Hudson again. This came up because there's a home on Wallace that a driveway enters on Wallace, but the home itself is back behind the house in front of it, and that has been torn down. And the neighbor was concerned. The neighbor in front was concerned about what they were going to build and where they were going to build it. And I went, how do you come up with setbacks when you don't have a street frontage to base how you orient that?
Right.
There's that one, the one on Christie Cove,
Uh-huh.
I think technically has 100-foot street frontage. They,
It has a driveway that, you
Yeah.
know, goes directly onto Christie.
all of them go directly onto a street.
Yeah,
The problem- but
The
the-
lot itself fronts Christie, like you said, 100 feet of it.
Right. That one was, I don't know what, that one was gerrymandered to get 100 feet, which is why it has that long pointy, it's a very bizarre shape. And that was done to get, so they could split it off from the lot in front of it and make it a legal lot. So that one was not one that I had thought was an issue. There are 2 others that are not on the list. One is right next door to the one that's shown on Timberline. There's a driveway that goes down, and there's a house on either side that's back behind the houses in front of them.
4916 is also a
Yeah.
flag lot.
Right. And then there's one on Ashworth that has a driveway, and for years, I didn't even know there was a house back there. I mean, the driveway is right next to the next door driveway, so you don't even notice that it's really 2 driveways. So there's another one that's back there on,
What,
On
what address
Ashford.
is that? Ashford?
I don't know what the,
What? Oh, are you talking about the Shaws?
So that's,
So this
that's
isn't
another.
fully, is not a fully comprehensive list of all the ones that exist.
No, and the idea was not to do this based on individual properties, but to come up with a concept for how we address that. Because right now, we base it on street frontage, and there's setbacks based on from the street, from the, on the corner, what the setback is.
Well, can I ask? I didn't mean to interrupt, but you said what we do right now. Nikki, we probably had other things that have come up in the past. Whatever,
We've discussed this.
why, not to us.
Well, that's why it's being
Oh,
brought up, is
you're
because,
gonna speak for her. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
well,
I did-
because we don't have a method in our code for how you address those that don't have 100-foot street frontage to base the setbacks from. And so if you have a lot that's essentially surrounded by other properties, and it just has a little driveway that's coming up there, you don't have the right-of-way. So on most lots, it's really 40 feet from the curb on the front side, right? Because you have 10-foot right-of-way, and that's where your property line starts. So you don't have that 10 feet there. And then you have homes that it's not backing up to the backyard, right? Typically, we have 40 feet between building lines on backyards. But in this case, the backyard may be up against somebody's side yard, or maybe it's against the city of Austin, or maybe it's on a bluff on timberline, and there's like, a huge drop off behind it. And so it doesn't really matter to the neighbors, because there's not, the neighbor is commercial property down below. So the issue is, how do we address that before it comes up and somebody has already designed their house on one of these lots and we haven't had any guidance, and they have assumed where they can place the house. So we're just trying to get ahead of it before we have building plans that come in without any guidance.
Well,
Wanna
don't,
ask- sorry.
Well, like on Wallace, the one at 98 Wallace. To me, the important setbacks are those that are adjacent to other properties, which are the side yards and the backyards. But Wallace
Well, but-
actually does have, well, it has two side yards, I guess, if you're looking at just the rectangular part. So, I mean, if they had,
It's really on Vance. It's
yeah, it really is on
On your
Vance.
street
I
map,
agree.
it says
It
Vance.
says
Yeah, I was
Wallace,
confused
but it
about
really
It's-
is on Vance.
The address is 98 Wallace.
Okay, well, the Rollingwood street map says it turns into Vance once it
It's right in-
crosses
it's-
Hatley.
Right in the, no, it's not Vance, it's still Wallace down there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of confused by it.
So
too.
they do have an entry pathway there off of Wallace.
Yes,
There's a driveway apron
Yeah,
there,
right,
and it goes all the way back.
Yeah.
yes.
So it is what I call a flag lot, and that's
Yeah.
what most other communities call these flag lots. It's
Yeah.
Right,
separated from, no frontage on a street, and they're accessed through a pole.
right.
Right.
So, kind of back to Jerry's question, I mean, some of these have homes on them.
Yeah.
How was that do we know how that was interpreted at the time that those were built? I don't know.
Some of them probably were built before we had a bunch of any code at all.
Like a couple of them are reasonably new, like this
No,
Inwood
really?
Cove.
Yeah.
The one on Inwood Cove is new, and that one was one that was broken off from a lot on Timberline. And I think originally, what is that, Grove Court maybe was supposed to go through. Anyway, that lot was stranded, and there was no street access at all for that lot. And the home that was built on Timberline, where it used to have, was joined, if you want to the house on Timberline. When they built that house, they built it so wide that there was no place to put a driveway to get back to that other lot. So there was a lawsuit on that in order to be able to provide them with a driveway.
We'll ask maybe the city, the first 4 Inwood Cove and 5 Inwood Cove are listed as the flag lots. That's 4 and 5. But the highlighted one, the red highlighted is number 3 Inwood Cove. Is that a flag lot, or is that,
Yes, it's a flag lot.
because they have an entry directly off of Inwood Cove
Right, it's still a flag lot.
because it's
They
a
don't
narrow,
have full frontage.
okay. So there's 3 there then,
Correct.
okay. So 3 Inwood Cove is another one.
Is that one's, but this says 3 Inwood Cove is not a flag lot, okay.
Well, that's what
So-
I wrote that on there.
Okay, so it's,
That's
not,
mine,
okay,
that's mine, I'll scratch it off.
okay. So yeah, all that frontage there is just on somebody else's driveway.
Yeah.
Well, it's their driveway.
I don't think for 3 it is, I think that's for 2.
I
The
think all
driveway-
of those homes have a
they-
driveway.
They kind of meet down there in the circle.
But 3, the driveway comes down to the street, well, they all do, I guess, but anyway, I'm saying that long straight line, I think is the driveway for 1 or 5.
4 and 5.
5 or 4, I don't know, one of them, 4. No, 5 it says here.
I think 4 has a different driveway. But anyway.
3 has a different driveway, yeah.
I think there's a couple of things here, okay? One, I think, right off the get, we ought to understand there's not a whole lot of these to do, okay? So there's only half a dozen or so of these properties. I think the most important thing to be considering here is safety. That whatever it is that enables first responders to get to the scene of a health issue or whatever, whatever helps make that happen by visibility or otherwise should be a consideration. So that the orientation of a house, and what we are talking about is the orientation of a house. Whatever, if the orientation helps assist in identifying that property as being a place that's having trouble, then that ought to be a consideration here. Beyond that, does anybody have any ideas about how we establish what the orientation of a property should be in one of these odd situations?
Well, I also think the effect on your neighbors is a consideration.
Yeah, I think that's probably the
You
biggest.
know,
Yeah, I think the presence of the driveway is gonna make it pretty obvious how you get down to the house.
Yes.
So I was not concerned about this from a safety standpoint. I was concerned about it from a, how close to your neighbor do you get to be in which direction?
So I did some research on this.
Yeah.
Can I present that?
Say again, I'm sorry.
Research I did on this on other communities, how
Yeah.
they define this.
Oh, by all means, please do.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So they could define these as flag lots, which means it's an interior lot that has no direct frontage on the street, but it has to be accessed by a corridor or the pole of the flag. And most communities that I looked at consider the side of the lot where you enter into it from your pole, the driveway, that is considered the front yard. And then, of course, the opposite one is your backyard, and
Sure.
then what's left over is
It
your
all
side
falls out,
yards. And on my little insert, I marked that, where that would be on these particular lots.
Okay.
I didn't do it on 3 because I didn't realize that was also a flag lot, but I guess it would be,
So, Jay, whenever you're looking at 4 Inwood Cove, okay, and the driveway kind of runs on a diagonal to the major part of the lot, then you have an F there, and I guess is that F, is that for front, or is that what it means? Or?
yeah, and the little dark arrow there, that's where their actual physical driveway is right now.
Right.
That's where they're entering in, and same thing on 5.
Okay.
That arrow is, that's where the driveway is.
So the front yard would actually be a diagonal?
In that particular case, yes.
Yeah, yeah. It,
See, to me, that causes problems. If you look at 98 Wallace, you have a driveway that's going down there, but in order to get into the house, you're gonna have to turn left in order to get into the house. So does that make the front where you've put it, or does that make the front perpendicular to the, or parallel to the driveway?
Well, you're entering in the side of the lot that has an F in it, just for argument's sake. That's where you enter into the lot, into the main part of the lot.
okay, going back to 4 Inwood Cove, I'm just trying, if you were going to draw the box of where that house is going to be on that lot, would you draw it such that the front of the house would be perpendicular to that driveway, but off of the rectangle? It won't be, it'll kind of ignore the shape of the rectangular lot. Is that, am I clear? Will the front of the house actually be perpendicular to that driveway? Or is it allowed to be somehow oriented along the axes of the lot?
I mean, I don't know. I'm just presenting what other communities, how they've defined what is the front yard in these lots. I'm not, now some of them have caveats. They'll say, well, you can reduce the front yard setback, you know, which is currently 30 on an interior lot. I mean, there's different tweaks you can do.
Right.
They also say that you measure the setbacks on the widest part of the lot, of that lot. That's something else you can do. So I'm not really, I don't have a way, I'm not an architect, you know,
Right.
a way to face the house.
I'm
You know, it's just determining what would be your front yard setback.
Right. Well, I think the city of Westlake, their setbacks are
excuse me.
all bigger on every dimension than ours, with the exception of our front yard setback. So
Right.
Yeah.
they already have more generous setbacks where it doesn't make as much difference which way you orient a house on their,
But they
on-
also use this rule to determine what's the front yard.
right. And I think that I would not look at the the Inwood Cove. That's really just a bizarre shape, and that probably is,
So are you asking that we not use that as one of our samples that we would consider?
The Inwood Cove?
The Inwood Cove?
I wasn't trying to use any of them as samples.
Well,
I
what,
was trying to come up with a concept that was irrespective of the particular lot, because I don't want us writing code for a
Okay.
particular lot.
okay.
I want us
Right.
writing code for the circumstance.
Going back to the city council meeting, I think when I was at the podium, I'd asked staff to assemble prior to this meeting what would be these irregular lots and flagpole lots, whatever, that we would be considering, so that we could come up with a general statement that covers them all. And they've done, I think, a pretty good job of identifying, you know, what the things are. And unfortunately, they don't look too similar. I mean, they're all kind of different.
Well, I think you eliminate the Christie Cove one, because that one
Well,
is not, that's not a flagpole lot.
The one on,
you know,
which one on? Oh, on
The one on
Christie Cove?
Christie Cove, yeah.
Yeah.
we,
And it's it's all finished and beautiful. I think, you know, like I already said and what Tony said, I think what the important part of this is the impact on the neighbors. So I think any ordinance needs to be written in such a way that we have a minimum of, I would say 15 feet setback on all sides, at minimum of 15. It's hard, and perhaps we could say one of the sides has to be 20, and then let the architect decide which side is the 20 and the other two are the 15, and not worry about the front too much at this point.
But
More concern yourselves with that no part of the structure will be closer than 15 feet to the property line.
You have all kinds of other ordinances that are based on what is your front yard and what is your backyard.
I know, but
And what is
they
your
don't
side
apply
yard?
to this. If you just create verbiage that says you cannot build closer than 15 feet from any one of like the Wallace one, and one side has to be at least 20, that should protect those other property owners.
One could argue that even on the Wallace one, that just going down that driveway, 30 feet constitutes a 30-foot.
Well, that's true.
That gets you,
Yeah,
you know.
it does.
And they can, from there on in, they can do anything they want.
Right,
But-
except that they shouldn't be able to build too close to any of those
Well,
adjacent
okay,
properties.
but, you know, so how do you break out the major part of the lot from the driveway part of the lot, and then, yeah,
Most of these ordinances that specify how do you treat a flag would have a caveat in there that you measure the setbacks from the widest part of that. So the front yard setback is on Wallace would be that, I guess that's south facing, the long stretch there. It would not be 30 feet from the street.
You measure
Can
it
I
from the
s-
property line.
Can I provide some like planning recommendations
sure.
on like how things are typically done? So I see that there's probably less than 10 lots that have this issue, and there probably are over 100 lots in Rollingwood. And you can't plan and you can't make regulations for every specific lot. And while you're looking at these and trying to dwindle down like which lot is the most appropriate to base a regulation on, they're all very unique, which is the concept of a variance. These properties, when they come in individually, you want to be able to look at them and look at, are you affecting your neighbor? Because each of these lots are so unique and different towards each other that my planning recommendation would be to not write regulations specific to these. And when they come to develop, that is a variance process. I mean, these would meet the criteria for a variance, and that way, when they do come in front of the Board of Adjustment, they can look at these specific lots and determine what would be best for adjacent neighbors.
well, what, indeed, that last sentence was kind of the crux of it, is what will have the least impact, negative impact on your neighbor, okay? And who is to judge what that is going to be? What Jeannie said made some sense, I thought, the minimum is going to have to be 15 feet
Right,
around the major portion of the lot,
right.
I guess. And we would be then defining that 15 feet means that you're okay with, your neighbor's gonna be okay with that. That's the definition. Neighbor
Well, that-
okay inside 15 feet, right?
Well,
Right?
I would think so. I mean,
Okay,
that's what
we
we
ju-
have right now on
Well,
our
we
signs.
can make it that,
Yeah.
okay, but, will that make, here's my fear, is that some of these lots, I don't know, whenever you go 15 feet all around them in every direction, is there buildable area in there? I don't know how big these things are, but, you know, if you take 30 feet, you know, can you build in there? Is it more than a 10-foot wide house or deep house, you know?
Well, I mean, you can say, I mean, like our curtain ordinance says that we can have 10 feet on one side and 15 feet on the other, up to
Right.
25.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do it that way too, but I mean, I'm just thinking that a minimum, spacing between any adjacent, property should be 10 to 15, and maybe you say 12, I don't know, but I'm
Well,
just saying it would be a way
Well,
of at least a starting point.
We could say that it's 15 feet, and that if that doesn't work, then that's when you would seek a variance.
We already have greater than 15 feet on two sides in our code.
Well, we're just,
So,
baby steps, baby steps.
so I was going to say, the point is not to give them more buildable area.
No.
The point
Wait.
is to determine what the appropriate orientation is, or if we need to change the setbacks allowed for those,
Because
for those lots.
You're saying just go to planning and then present your plan, and then they have to get a variance, but the code is based on what is your front yard, and that's what we don't have in there.
Right.
We
Yeah,
have to have a
so-
way to define what is your front yard.
Yeah, and I know the research that you had done was great, but typically there are other ordinances that affect those requirements. So looking at a couple of these lots, on top of them being flag lots, they're irregular shaped lots, and so most cities have ordinances that prohibit that. And most of the cities that I've worked for, such as Bee Cave or Dripping Springs, they have allowed the city administrator or city manager to determine what those setbacks are. And then there's an appeal process. If they don't agree with that, then they go to the Board of Adjustments to appeal a decision by the administrative official. And so there's that process that a lot of cities take, because you can't write regulations for everyone, and you sort of can get in trouble if you overregulate. So
Are you
just
allowed
want
to
to be
send
careful.
it to planning and zoning or city council as opposed to the building official, or does it have to be the building official
No.
in that scenario?
It's just like an administrative official. You can have them
So that's
make a
city employee,
determination.
not a commission.
We can look at sending something like that to the commission.
I mean, that's what I was looking at this, is we have so few of them, could we do it more bespoke? The one thing with going straight to BOA is we don't have a definition.
Yeah. Well,
And
so
BOA is a high bar to clear, you know, yeah, I like your idea of whether it's city council, planning and zoning, building official, you go try to hammer it out, and obviously, you know, I think there should be a notice of neighbors so they can have input on that. And then if you can't come to an agreement that both sides are good with, then yeah, you appeal to BOA at that point.
I think that what you said is true about, you know, BOA being a high bar to cross. But I would say that an irregularly shaped lot like some of the ones we're looking at here actually constitute hardship.
Right.
And once you've established hardship, it's not that hard to get past BOA.
Yeah, and I'm not overly familiar with it. I was just wondering if you have a neighbor that just says, well, what's best for me is not building on this lot at all. So I don't like any of these ideas.
Is it a hardship
And-
when
and
you
will that
buy an
sway the
irregular,
board?
small, irregular shaped lot? Is that a hardship?
Yeah, let
That's
me,
put on you by
if I can, a sample they gave me from David's previous experience with special exemptions. It actually says that permit such modification of the height, yard area, coverage, parking shall be necessary to secure appropriate development of a parcel of land that differs from other parcels by being of such restricted area, shape, or slope that it cannot be appropriately developed without such modification. So that's our body, the Board of Adjustment, with intelligent people on them that can look at a plan being presented by the architect and the owner specifically and uniquely for that lot. And there's so many variables, it's too complex for any generic code or rule. We have enough of that.
We currently don't have a rule for this, so what are you asking an
I'm saying
exception
that it
for?
automatically goes as a special exemption, and I marked it up.
It's a
and make it in our
special
section.
exception, but yeah,
Special
Part of our-
exception. Yeah.
Special exemption,
Exception.
exception.
Exceptions.
You mean any
Yeah.
plan submitted to Nikki has to go directly to the Board of Adjustment to be?
So that's what I'm trying to avoid, because right now, there's no guidance, so then you're putting a big burden on Nikki if she has to make that decision. If everyone goes to the Board of Adjustment and you have different people making the decisions on, oh, yeah, that one's okay, but this one's not, or whatever, we're trying to get some guidance that we
No,
have
I-
input from, and we have some parameters that we have all agreed on that are appropriate to consider in general, not specific to,
Well, I
An
do-
indi- an
I
individual
disagree with
lot.
that idea at all, because we can't get specific, each one's unique. Each solution's gonna be unique. We don't need a generic rule for uniqueness here. There's only 525 lots. We can pick and choose, each one can be individualized. That's a benefit and uniqueness of Rollingwood. We don't need to be a broad general rule for these specific lots, or really for any lot.
How are they gonna make a design if they don't know what the parameters are for setbacks?
They have the general rules, and they know they're going for a Board of Adjustments that's gonna be looking at our intent
But
of
they-
the open required
they
yards.
don't have general rules, that's the problem.
We have our code, we have our intent of the required yards. I think the Board of Adjustment knows that too.
And like Duke said at our last meeting, he said that most architects won't go very far before, they'll just do a concept placement of a structure on the lot and then take it to the Board of Adjustment, so they don't spend much time and money, they just, the potential client, and then they go to the Board of Adjustment and say, and argue for, the setbacks that they are proposing. And the Board of Adjustment, and like Duke said, he's had to do it many times, and he's never really had an issue with it.
And so their plan would determine what they consider the front yard then?
Yes.
Well, think about why, when we say that our front yards are 30 feet of setback, why do we do that? And I think the reason is to, one, give the feeling of space within a neighborhood, and two, and to ensure that homes in a neighborhood are somewhat aligned along the street. They're all following pretty much the same rule. But this falls outside of that. And so if we're saying that, we're not, that we have to apply a 30-foot front yard setback in all cases, that may be overreach in this case. So I'm kind of going back to where Jeannie was at and saying, well, what's the minimum? Truly, what are we trying to do? And we're talking about trying to not harm the neighbors, probably establish a certain feel of spaciousness, but it doesn't necessarily have to comply with the rules that are in place for along the typical homes, okay? If we said just that, if we just said that there's a minimum distance to the property line that has to be honored, we're almost there.
What is the front yard gonna be then?
Well, don't.
Okay, let's not
take
get there.
front
Let's
yard
just,
away from it.
we'll just say, we'll figure that in a minute. But the other aspect of it is, now what's the orientation of the house? And how do we establish that? So there's two components here. It's the amount, I think, of space that's gonna be around whatever's built. And then how does whatever it get built, how is it determined where it faces?
Well, don't we already have an ordinance that says that the front of the house should be, you can, for emergency vehicles, you can access the house by the street address. That's really all we need. I mean, but I don't think that a front yard in this case is relevant. To me, it's really whether or not you're building too close to the adjacent property.
What about all the ordinance that determine placement of mechanical equipment?
That's all
Place
side
gates.
yards. That's all side
Once,
yards.
once we've established
What's in
what
the
the front
backyard?
yard is in the backyard, we've got that. We're good.
So you do need to establish what's the front yard and what's
It's-
the back yard.
That's right, and that's the orientation thing. Now, if we said, okay, going back all the way to the Inwood Cove thing, I like Inwood Cove because it's a weird thing. If you said, okay, well, the house has to be oriented such that it is perpendicular to the driveway, which means that now the lot is kind of cattywampus, it doesn't work. Any rectangle that you put inside there that is going to be perpendicular to the driveway is going to be off kilter from the lot. But if you establish it on the corners of those lots, that there's a minimum distance, say 15 feet,
Okay.
say
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah.
then maybe you have a true buildable area. You've got an irregularly shaped front lot and an irregularly shaped back lot and irregularly shaped side lots, but you're meeting the criteria that we're setting down. You're 15 feet, corner to corner, corner to corner, and now that's you've established your buildable area. What you do inside the buildable area, who cares?
Well, one thing I'd point out, like I'm looking at 98 Wallace, where whatever this lot is,
Right.
it's marked 100, presumably is a normally situated house that, you know, fronts that street in
Yeah.
front of it. And so their backyard is in the back. And normally everybody, you've got a backyard and, you know, we've got a little more space, and then you've got another backyard behind you,
Right.
so there's a little more space. So I mean, if you go to 15 feet there, that person in front is losing what you would ordinarily have kind of backyard to backyard. So I don't disagree with the sentiment, but there probably are some scenarios where 15 feet would be fine on the two sides of this, and maybe even that back part, but maybe is not good on that front part that adjoins the backyard of the adjacent house.
All kinds of stuff. It's an unlimited type of, you know.
But-
There's to me so many possibilities. I think it's behind,
Well,
we're just gonna spin wheels. I'm not
Okay.
gonna be for any restrictions. I'm gonna be for just going to the Board of Adjustments, let those knowledgeable, smart people figure it out on a case-by-case basis, and that's it.
what
That's fair. And otherwise, you're restricting a property owner and
If we don't
For
have
no
a,
reason.
I think what we need a basic rule, okay?
No, you
Because
don't. You've got-
we need hold on, please. If we need a basic rule because it gives the Board of Adjustments something to work with.
well,
If you're gonna ask for a variance, you're asking for a variance of what?
I say a special exception here. The
Okay.
107-491, and it's on the agenda packet.
Well, to your point, Dave, I think, you know, what our council mentioned, whether it's the building official or planning and zoning or city council, if there were a first step on these where you go in and you try to create something, no, we don't agree,
We can't.
now Board of Adjustment. I mean, what about an interim step where you're not just going straight to Board of Adjustment? You're
I
still
would-
having a group of knowledgeable people evaluate the plan.
I would ask Nikki.
Well, the special exception is designed to allow you to not comply with the code that should apply to you. And if we
Well,
don't,
should or cannot apply.
But what if we said the code on, I don't know, I guess you'd have to define the lot, maybe it's just flag lot is simple enough. If you have a flag lot, you present your initial proposal, you know, incorporating our city code, which obviously doesn't work exactly on that. You come present to whoever it is first, figure out if you come to an agreement there, and then no agreement, then you go to Board of Adjustment, and, you know, you have what that board or person or whoever it is said, this is what we're willing to do. Homeowner says, that's not good enough. Neighbor says, I don't like it, whatever. Everybody goes to Board of Adjustment to have them render a decision on, you know, whether they're more in favor of the homeowner versus the board official. I don't know, spitballing.
As, instead of flag lot, can we say that the lot has does not meet the minimum required frontage.
Yeah. But I guess my point is you come and a person or a board says, this is what we are willing to approve. And the homeowner can say, good, let's do it. Or they say, I disagree with you. And then you go to Board of Adjustment. So now the code that the Board of Adjustment is reviewing is what that building official or board has said is approved.
Well, except if you wait till that point, then somebody's already purchased the lot. And if you don't know what you're gonna be able to build before you purchase the lot, or know what the limitations are, you know, before you purchase the lot, it seems like that's unfair to whoever's trying to sell the lot and whoever's trying to buy the lot if you don't know what the rules are that apply to that lot.
What,
Well,
could I make a little suggestion? What if we said that these lots, which are lots that have no street frontage other than the driveway, or could otherwise be defined as a flag lot, that they have a minimum 15-foot setback all around, but that the front yard be determined by the methodology that I described here. So then
Where the driveway's going in.
where the driveway enters into the lot, that side is the front yard.
Okay.
And I marked it where it would be on these.
And what that does is that establishes the base case upon which you would be making an argument against if you couldn't do it.
Well, they can't do what our setbacks are now, so just go straight to the Board of Adjustment. I don't wanna throw at Nikki, who's asking us for guidance. I'd put it to a board of people that would scrutinize the plan and ask the same questions you all are doing. And if it doesn't look fair or amendable enough, they will say, go back and revise it. That's why we have a Board of Adjustment.
Oh, that's also why we have a P and Z committee.
Are you,
But I mean, like the Wallace Lane example here, if you do a driveway coming in and curving around, and you're saying that that's the front of the house, then so the front of the house is basically, I don't know, I don't,
Right.
huh?
I know, I like to get into the weeds, and this is one where I say punt.
Well, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And I've said my piece. I think that, you know, the rule should be that you have to have, at least have 15 feet all around it. And that would be the only rule there is.
Well,
And then the rest of it, you have to go to the Board of Adjustment. But at least they have 15 feet, and they could have before they purchase the lot, they could have an architect come in and say, well, 15 feet's not gonna give you enough to do what you wanna do.
And does the Board of Adjustment determine what the front of the house is?
Well, I'm not sure it
Yeah.
it matters.
Yes,
I don't
they-
think it matters.
But we also have tinting that doesn't apply to the front or the back.
what are,
Right.
And over projections that are different for the side
Yeah.
versus the front and the back. and
Yeah.
It's,
I
it's
think-
complex.
all
I
kinds
think
of
what
things.
Jay said is actually a good starting point, and one that we can, we could take it and push it to city council and say, well, this is what we think.
And they can come in and say, I don't think that
Yeah.
that should be the front for these reasons, and that's the exception.
Yeah,
And I do worry if you
it
just
gives
say
us a
15
general
feet
case.
anywhere that you have.
we've been asked to
scenarios
provide,
where
we've been
they
asked to
kinda lose a
provide a
little bit of
general
backyard.
case.
But if you
Excuse me.
go with his, you're coming in from
Yeah.
the side, I mean, that's gonna be 15 feet anyway.
Yeah,
No, this is gonna be 30.
No.
This is the front.
The front
I'm saying this is-
going to be here.
Well, he's got
You
it marked
drive
here,
Well.
because that's the front is where it is, I don't know if you said it's
I
perpendicular.
wasn't looking at that, I was looking at driving in and making the curve.
This one's tricky, because you could probably do it either way.
Yeah, so.
Well, look
See,
at,
That's why.
But I think, what was your definition, Jay?
yeah,
Of a flag lot.
Of the,
yeah.
of what would be the front when you have. a
Okay, they
flag
say
lot.
for flag lots or recessed lots, the pole of the flag, the driveway connects the lot to the street. The end of the driveway where it meets the main part of the lot is often considered the front yard or for setback purposes.
Well, look at,
So look at the picture on 98 Wallace and see what you think, how that
Yeah.
applies to that.
Yeah, that kind of works.
well, look at 4914 Timberline and 4916 Timberline.
So,
Jay didn't put an arrow on 4916, but
because
it-
I didn't know it was,
right,
on
right. But it looks like following that guidance, the one on 4916 would go straight. Is it 16, 18, whichever, the one that's not marked. The numbers are too small to read, but the
That
one
one
that's
looked
not
like-
marked, it looks like that would come straight in.
It looks like a variance
Yeah,
is
so
needed.
the front on that one
Would-
would be
would-
against 4910, right?
Right, so then the front yard of that one would not be the same as the front yard on the one next to it.
I think that is a straight driveway and it goes right between the two properties.
Right,
And one turns right into their property and the other one turns
Yeah.
left into their property.
right.
if you
So
followed
you're
the
gonna have
rule-
them facing each other?
If you followed that rule, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
who's,
like that.
who's,
I
Because-
mean, that's why,
who owns the driveway there? What lot does that belong to?
I don't know.
Do we know what lot that belongs to,
I don't know
Nikki?
that it, I
It's
don't,
4914,
it's not shown that
4916?
it belongs to any of the lots. It's
So-
it's a joint driveway for those two back properties, so.
You must have
So,
guaranteed ingress and egress.
And I think those houses already face that way,
Yeah, I think,
towards the
I
driveway.
think those would make sense
Well,
to
I
me
think
to
they,
face each
I think
other.
they face Timberline. Well, I think one of them faces Timberline,
Okay.
for sure.
I think 4916 faces Timberline, the other one faces Houses Drive.
yeah,
But
Yeah,
yeah.
going back to the one on Wallace, you would drive up that corridor, which is your driveway corridor, until you get to that corner, and that's the start of your front yard.
But to Jeannie's point, what if you hugged the right side instead of the left side
Yeah,
and curved around?
I still see that as the pole of the flag,
Yeah.
but,
Well, I think that's how, I mean, if you consider it the pole, maybe it's not defined by driveway, because you can put the driveway
I
where you
mean,
want.
if we set some.
Maybe you just call it the pole, yeah.
Yeah. If we set some minimum things, then they have every opportunity to take to the Board of Adjustment. I mean,
Yep.
if they don't like the front yard,
So that one, if they were buying, if our definition was the flag defines where it's shown as F here, that's probably not a very good layout, because that's a narrow lot front to back then, and that, so they're probably, they might be able to buy it knowing
actually,
you're gonna have kind
it's
of
a
a weird,
huge lot.
is it?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it's not as deep as the one in front of it.
Yeah.
but If you know you can do this based on those setbacks, and you say, I don't like that, I think it makes more sense to have my driveway curve around and turn the front to this, that's what you're going to
Yeah,
BOA for.
Uh-huh.
And they probably say, fine, other than the house in front might want not 10 feet on that side,
You know,
or something like that.
Jay, back in the CRCRC days, Jay said something I thought that was prophetic. And
Uh-oh.
that was that everybody wants us to make all of our lots valued the same. That whatever ordinances we come up with should ensure that everybody's lot is of the same value. And I know that at least in the case of this 4914, which I think just recently sold, or was it 4916 that just recently sold, that they had a heck of a time selling that place, and it just kept coming down, down, down in value. And so they've established, I mean, okay, you got bargain basement lot in Rowanwood, Texas, and you're gonna have to deal with whatever the rules are now if you've got that bargain basement lot. So, I think if we establish some sort of a minimum criteria that, you can accept or not, or take it to the Board of Adjustment and see if you can get it fixed, well, that was part of the deal. That was part of getting the bargain basement lot.
We could say that, we require a minimum of 15 feet on all sides, and one side must be 20 feet or something like that, which could give you a front yard or a backyard or something like that. Or we could say two sides have to have 20 feet and two sides have to have 15 or something, but at least it's a parameter of some sort that they can look at with their architect before they purchase the property.
Why don't we keep it simple? Let's just say 15
The
feet all
15,
around.
all right, that's
and-
fine, but
and then- and
I
if-
was
and if
trying
that
to
doesn't
accommodate
fly-
Jay
And if
with
that
his
doesn't fly,
concern
we
about
can,
front
you can fix
yard,
it up.
but to me,
No,
it's-
I would still want to establish what is the front yard.
I would too.
But you would have 15
I'm with
feet
that.
all around.
I'm with you. I agree.
I don't know why. As long as one of the sides is kept from, I mean, what's the purpose of the front yard? As long as you can only do your, electrical, or your AC units and all that stuff in one side or the other, I don't.
Which side? Because it can
Well,
only go.
You
that's
can
why I'm
put your-
saying maybe make one side 20.
You can't put your pool equipment in your front yard.
You can't,
Well, you have to.
well, it's in the required yard, okay? Not just the front
Well,
yard, it's
okay.
the required yard, which means what we're doing was we're establishing here 15 feet minimum required yard around all this stuff. Now, if you come in, you build your house and it is 20 feet from the property line, you can put your AC equipment in, you can do whatever you want.
Right.
As long as
Or a
it's within that
pool.
so-called buildable area.
Right.
You know, so what we're doing is we're establishing what the minimum requirement is.
And that you can't build, you can't put certain things in that minimum.
Within that, yeah,
Uh-huh.
within that frame, yeah.
But you can
You'd have to
put,
go back and change some of the code that we wrote. Or
Yeah.
is it all just based on required yard?
Yeah,
I
this
thought
is
we
all the
had
new
side.
stuff, yeah, all our new stuff is on required yard.
well, you can put your air conditioning equipment in the required yard setback, right?
Yeah.
But you can't put it in your front yard, required yard setback.
That's correct, not allowed to
Okay.
do it, yeah.
So, if you don't define what front yard is,
Yeah.
I think you're opening up
I
a
think you're right.
Pandora's box.
I think
Well,
you're
we
right.
can have, that could be part of the requirement, that one of the yards, okay, 15-foot minimum, but one side must be designated a front yard for, purposes of restricting, development. And then let the architect and the potential owner decide what that front yard is. Let them.
We also added something recently that your primary access has to be visible from the front
Yeah,
yard.
something. But let them decide which one they want it to be.
I would love it if someone made a motion.
Well, again, establishing the front yard from the driveway has to do partially with the safety things. That's where whoever comes in there is gonna access the lot. So, and also all these other codes that are based on establishing what's a front yard, what's a backyard, and what's side yards. So, I will make an attempt at a motion. Let's see. That there are several lots in Rollingwood that have no street frontage other than a driveway. And these are,
Don't list the lots.
sometimes defined as pole lots, being the main part of the lot being the flag, and the connecting driveway being the pole. I propose that the front lot line be defined as where the end of the driveway meets the main part of the lot, that be considered the front yard for setback purposes. Obviously, then the opposite side is the rear yard, the remaining two sides are the side yards. And that the setback for these pole lots, or, I'm just gonna call them pole lots,
Flag lots.
be a minimum of 15 feet from the lot
On
lines.
all sides.
on all sides.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? I'll second it.
Can I offer a friendly amendment?
Sure.
At one point you said the front yard is defined where the driveway meets. Could we say the pole, where the pole meets? Since the driveway is somewhat, if the pole is big enough, the driveway can be in multiple different places.
I think that would work. What if there's not a driveway there yet?
Right, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Well, there
Can
has
I-
to, there
can I
has to
make
be
a
street
comment?
frontage.
Looking at a lot of these, technically like how most cities would regulate flag lots, I wouldn't actually consider most of these to be flag lots. Maybe Inwood Cove would be considered a flag lot per the definition of how most cities define flag lot. These are more like irregular shaped lots. And we sort of did like a quick dive into one of these, and a lot of these lots were created prior to y'all even having a zoning. So they didn't have to establish those setbacks or
Right.
frontage requirements. So I'd be careful on using the term pole, because I don't think a lot of these actually have like what technically.
Then a friendly amendment would be just to extract that, take away that defining piece where you talked about pole. You don't have to do that.
So it's a flag lot or recessed lot is one that has a driveway area that connects the lot to the street.
Well, it just has a minimum
It's a lot,
amount
a lot.
of frontage to the street.
Yeah, it's a lot whose, I mean, this is actually, to some extent, this is true of virtually all cul-de-sac lots. But it's a lot that does not conform to the minimum requirements for frontage.
But yeah, does that encompass more lots than what we've been?
Yeah, unfortunately it does, yeah.
That's why I agree with Jerry, I think. Very minimum, and that's it. Very minimum language.
Because I guess with 4916 and 4914, we don't even know if it's a flag lot because we don't know who owns the driveway.
Well, most deeds have some kind of,
That's more
guaranteed
what we see.
language that guarantees ingress and egress. And so, it may be that 4918 owns that frontage, but they have to allow
Okay.
ingress and
Let's-
egress to
Could we-
the
Well, the
lots.
description is lots in Rollingwood that have no street frontage other than the driveway.
Where's that?
Right, there you go.
That's in the front sheet from the
Okay.
city council.
That, for exactly those words, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
That have no frontage other than driveway. Okay?
Right.
Okay, so, why don't we take your motion again?
I'm not very good at short-term memory, things like that.
Get Michaela can read back what, do you have that, what he said before?
I don't have all of it, I have bits and pieces.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and try. There are several lots in Rollingwood that have no street frontage other than a driveway access.
For such lots.
Pardon?
For such lots.
Don't-
For such lots.
Okay, not the number 4.
For those lots,
Yeah.
the front required setback could be determined by where the end of the driveway meets the main part of the lot. Period. Then, another point that setbacks for these lots that have no street frontage other than the driveway will be set at a minimum of 15 feet all around on all sides. Period.
All right. We have a motion. I'm gonna second it. We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No,
No,
Okay. Did I hear your vote, Tony?
Aye.
Aye. We have a vote of 3-2. The ayes carry. Moving along.
I bet we'll see this again.
We will see it again. All right, let's see. Family Gutter got that. Discussion and possible action on definitions and regulations of playhouses and playscapes. Possible action on defining a mechanical equipment accessory structure. Why? Okay, the draft ordinance is this. We've already been through all this.
shall we open for discussion?
There's no solid floor. Yeah, it is open for discussion. I'm just reading through again.
Well, Sarah made the comment at the city council meeting that the playscape solid floor wasn't defined as being at grade level. So I proposed, as shown in the markup, that the playscape definition states that means a freestanding structure that is mostly unenclosed, has no solid floor at grade level, nor within 48 inches of grade, comma, and is designed for children's activities. So I propose to add the at grade level, nor within 48 inches of grade.
My question, I didn't get to watch the city council, but so I think we're talking about there's no solid floor, but there's a floor, so that there's a little enclosed area above.
Yeah, like at the top of the slide.
But would that not kind of be a playhouse that's a freestanding structure with a roof and supported by walls? Wouldn't those usually have
The
walls?
playhouse is at grade level.
I thought we were kind of doing playscape as more of a open air swing set type thing, and then when you start closing things in, whether it's a second floor or a first floor, that becomes a playhouse.
You're right, I'm trying to see if,
Well, some playscapes,
playhouse-
like in the park there, have a slide, there's a structure, so you can get up there,
Self-face
and that has a
comparison.
floor.
And to me,
Right.
that's a playhouse now, because it also has a roof usually, and it usually has walls.
What if it didn't have a roof?
well, I'm thinking
They
that
usually do.
the playhouse.
They have walls because they don't want people to fall out of them. It's dangerous. And typically, they have a roof. I'm sure there's code. You probably have to have walls. if it's
Well,
above
the
a certain
intent is that
level.
the playhouse has a solid floor. The playhouse, the playscape's open.
Well, but our definition of playhouse
I
doesn't say
know,
anything about a solid
I
floor.
wonder if it got,
Playscape.
left off or,
Well, I don't think we cared about the floor. We
Yeah, I
cared
don't
about
either.
walls and a roof.
I don't think
Well-
so either.
until.
It's kind of not. It's not visible. You know, it's not see-through.
Exactly. It's gonna,
And so I think what we're talking about, my view of it, whether our definitions
Yeah,
are perfect or not, was that when you start enclosing and or having a roof, it's now a playhouse.
well, technically you're right, but the little playhouse on top of a playscape doesn't make the playscape a playhouse.
To me, it does.
Well, the definition I'm trying to say, it's a playscape because it still opens, it still lets the grass grow, the rain falls, and everything else. So
But it doesn't if
you
it's
can,
got a
it's,
floor above it.
yeah,
rain
but
doesn't
it's,
go in.
but it's open underneath that it can, the grass can still grow.
No, grass doesn't grow under those things.
Yeah, it does. If they're open, depends on how much
They don't get any sun.
Yeah,
If
that's
there,
why.
if there's a
that's
house
why-
above it, they don't
I'm-
put grass.
Well, it's,
In fact, you usually don't put grass under it because it won't grow. You put it in a bed of some sort.
yeah, but it can still soak up all the ground, rain can fall on it, put it that way.
Some-
Okay, so
some can.
anyway, that was, a comment that I tried to address.
But I
And-
agree that if a playscape has a roof on it, it's no longer only a playscape. It's a playhouse if it has a roof.
Plaything with a house on top of it.
Yeah,
Well,
It's
to
a
me,
house on stilts. Stilt house.
well, to me, if the sun can shine down on the ground, the rain can fall on the ground underneath it, it's a playscape. And I'm trying to let homeowners have playscapes everywhere because it doesn't violate the intent of having a required yard, which is supposed to be open and green and other things going on. So here I'm trying to do the best I can to not limit a property owner from doing a toy.
You're not, and you're trying to not restrain or define it as something that is,
Yeah,
impervious cover.
because right now,
It's basically impervious cover is what you're trying to avoid.
exactly, and
So-
playhouses are prohibited in required yards. So
They're
here,
allowed to encroach.
same thing, and they're not, you
No,
can't allow it, and to encroach or allow playhouses.
The playhouses can encroach.
Well, that's what we're doing, we're allowing now, we're encroaching in the required yards. Playhouses in the current code are prohibited. Okay,
Well, I'm talking about in the code that we approved last time is what I'm comparing.
I know, well, the,
yeah,
We
we're,
approved all of this.
right, right,
yeah.
right. I'm just saying we're opening up for playhouses to be in required yards.
Correct.
Okay, and I'm just saying that, okay,
I'm
should
saying if
be-
you got a playscape with one of those houses on top of it, I think it should follow the rules of the playhouse and there should be some limitations on how much it can encroach. I don't think we should call that a playscape and put the whole thing wherever you want in the required yard.
I disagree.
Can I just ask, what is the 48 inches? What is?
That's to get the sun and the air, the rain could fall on the ground underneath the elevated playhouse. Okay,
what if the floor is not solid?
well,
It just has slats in it or whatever, so the
there,
rain
there
and,
may be, and it may be, but the pictures I saw, they were open. When I Googled Home Depot, Lowe's, examples of playscapes, that's the images I came up with.
Were any of them 48 inches? I don't think they're usually that.
Well,
tall under.
they may be a little less, but, you know, I was trying to get the required yards intent satisfied. So,
I-
we're trying to be accommodating, not restrictive, but at the same time, we're trying to satisfy the community value of having open, you know, green spaces, et cetera. Okay, so, and perfectly. Though it may be, that's,
I don't really see the problem with what we.
I
last
like
time.
I don't wanna change any of it.
I don't know what
I
we're
think
trying
that
to
what
solve
I
here.
think that what we
Well-
have proposed is, I think it's fine.
that's fine with me too.
Yeah.
Because they could have a playscape that has a second floor
Yeah.
to get up to the slide, but it's not solid. It would just be slats with gaps in it. It's not solid then.
But to me, if we've got kind of an enclosed thing, I want
Yeah.
some more restrictions around it, which happens if it's considered a playhouse,
Yeah.
not a playscape.
Well-
So I think you're kind of, the started, you were the most concerned about all this stuff, and now you're saying I want to dial it back.
Well, I want to be practical with it. And I tried to understand the intent of the required yards from, a year ago. So and I want to be accommodating to the property owners. And so I could see, what I've already talked about, here. And so if we want to leave it the way it is, that's great. I have no problem
You're
with
still
that.
just talking about the definition part,
The
right?
definition, leave it as it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah, I would leave it as it is.
Yeah.
okay?
We,
Is there, Sarah, do you have anything you want to?
we beat this up pretty good. And I
Yeah, we did.
thought, I understand what the next item is gonna be in the discussion around it, but I don't know why we wanna make any changes to this place.
Okay.
I mean, the council
I
can
think it's
change
fine.
it on their own.
That's right, I think we're
They don't
fine.
have- we
This
don't
is
have to-
what we said, this is what we think.
Yeah,
Okay.
we already
Now-
talked,
Can I, then, moving on to the next item down there, I circled 120 square feet,
Yeah,
and I'd like to revisit that, just because I think 120, 10 feet by 12 feet is really big, and when you go 12 feet up, it's huge, and I would and I wrote 8 by 8 just to give you an idea of what an 8 by 8 is, and we should think how many kids can fit in a playhouse, to get an idea of how usable they are. And you can get a lot of, I'm figuring you could get 10 kids in an 8 by 8. And there's 2 levels, there's 20 kids in this playhouse, that's a lot of kids in just an 8 by 8. And that's 64 square feet, but I wrote down 96, and I just wanna open it up for discussion that, that if anybody's with me to reduce it down some.
Any idea of what current playhouses have in square footage?
Well, I'll tell you why I was okay with that, was because it was in the required rear yard, 120 feet.
Right.
And we made it more limited in the side yard. That was why
Right,
I was okay.
well, even in our required yards are getting minimum yards and the only yards. And our green spaces are going away and et cetera, et cetera. And so, they can make, I like the word encroachment I had before, they could have a 10 by 20, but only some of it could encroach in the rear yard. If they really wanted one 12 feet long,
10 by, 120 square feet is a lot.
yeah.
But this is in the backyard, no closer than 6 feet from the property line.
Right.
Yeah, but 12 feet up to, the light.
Yeah, I've got a
So-
trampoline that's less than 6
Well,
feet.
you got to jump around on that thing too, and it's open underneath.
I think it's arguably, well, yeah, you're more worried about the ground, I'm less worried about the ground, I'm more worried about the neighbor.
What are they doing? Seeing the kids go
Seeing,
up in it?
seeing the playscape, seeing the,
Oh, you ought to see my neighbor. No, I don't want to see. He's got, everything you want is in his
yeah,
backyard.
that's, I
no,
want
no, I want to be,
limitations around that.
But anyway,
you've
that's-
got 120 circled, and then you've got 96 next to it.
I know, I wrote 8 by 8, so I wanted you to think that
Okay.
8 by 8 is 64.
Right, okay. So, but you're wanting to change it from 120 to, you really want to do 96?
I really want to do 64, but I want to ease. I want you to consider it and
All
think
right.
about it.
Okay,
That's a
I'll-
big thing.
Okay, what was happening here when we got to the 120 is we were talking about how much hangover there was in a side yard versus a rear yard, and the rear yard is 20 feet, and almost all rear yards here are the full 20 feet. Side yards, well, they can change or whatever. So, if you want to make a motion to change it from 120 to 96, make it now.
Okay. I move that we change the, on health and playscapes, the total area of the playhouse shall not exceed 96 square feet, blah, blah, blah.
Okay,
What?
I have a question. Why not 100? 10 by 10?
That's fine.
Because
I just-
96 is a little awkward. I'd rather have 100.
Yeah, what is the square root of 96?
Okay. I move that the total area of a playhouse shall not exceed 100 square feet in a required rear yard and,
Okay.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay. The ayes have it, 4-1. All right. Moving on to discussion and possible action on defining mechanical equipment and accessory structures. This came before city council here in the last meeting. And this one I do understand there's why this is coming up again. And it is because we did not really specify in our recommendation as to how close to the property line mechanical equipment could be in a required yard. So if you have an air conditioner or whatever, is it allowed to be against the fence of your rear yard, or does it need to be somewhere closer? So I think what's being asked for here are property line boundaries as far as how close things can be.
In the rear yard.
In the rear yard,
In the
yeah,
rear
specifically. We've really already accounted for the side yard.
Right,
We've got
right.
better definition around it.
Right, so.
So
and-
Could,
I think I have to take credit for it. It's a little bit of sloppiness, I think, on our part. So,
could I just ask about the side yard setbacks, because I wasn't here for all of this?
yeah,
It now says a minimum of 10 feet from the property line is required for your mechanical equipment. And most mechanical equipment is gonna take like 4 or 5 feet,
That's right.
right? So that means if you have a 10-foot, it's gonna mean that you're gonna have to put it on the 15-foot side setback. And you're gonna have to plan your house completely around that
Right.
restriction.
you got it right, Jay.
Or build it so that it's inset.
Yeah, that's
Or
right.
take away some of your buildable
Right.
area and put it there.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's right.
everybody's okay
What
with that.
what we
No.
established.
No, not
and
everybody, but
What
it
we
passed.
But it passed.
What we established, and you'll recall we took this back to CRCRC, is that nothing is allowed within a 10-foot required yard. Nothing. And so that's where the mechanical equipment falls in. So, yeah, you're right, you gotta pull back from that 10 feet, and then you can put your mechanical equipment in there. So, and if that becomes part of your buildable area, well, so be it. That's just the way it is. Or you can go in your backyard.
Right.
You can go in the back.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a successful change to the side setbacks without changing the side setbacks.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to understand.
Okay.
That must be a new provision, because I didn't have to deal with that.
Yeah,
It's very new.
it is,
But we have a
What
lot of
we-
old houses that have them in there. and
you'll
Everybody was
recall,
okay with it.
we even took chimneys out of the required side yard if it was 10 feet.
Okay.
Yeah,
Back-
so, yeah,
The backyard.
yeah. So, what we're looking for here is some kind of a distance from the property line is
Okay.
our mechanical equipment allowed to be.
Well, I marked up in
Okay.
your agenda, I just made it I deleted B and just said, mechanical equipment is permitted in the required side yard and in the required rear yard, subject to the following conditions. So I just inserted what the rear yard's the same as the side yard.
It has to be 10 feet from the property line
Yeah,
and screened from public view.
and practically your AC unit and, generators are gonna be close to
Yeah.
the house.
Yeah. And
Now,
And I think that cuts it.
That looks good to me.
Can
Yeah,
I-
yeah.
We'll make a motion then that section 10780 for mechanical and equipment and required yards be modified as follows: deletion of sentence or B, and new B to say mechanical equipment is permitted in the required side yard and in the required rear yard, subject to the following conditions, etc.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Oh, what?
For future agenda item, I would like to recommend that discussion of the possible, discussion of the location of pool equipment be put in a section for the swimming pools and patios. 107 something.
All right, well, okay.
But that's for
okay.
future.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Let's do, okay. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any additional discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'll abstain.
You'll abstain. Okay,
I don't like this one, so I'll let y'all change it.
all right, okay, very good. Okay. So the motion passes 4-0, I guess. All right, where are we? Number 8, regular agenda item 8, discussion and possible action to clarify allowable times for construction activities, including defining activities impacted, including construction, landscaping, utility work, and tree trimming. And we have questions, complaints, and Google Fiber and all that. Okay. And we do have an ordinance on the books. Here, 101-247, prohibited days and hours and signage and so on, that talks about from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. on any weekday. You're not allowed to make noise or do construction work. That's on weekdays, and then I think it allows some work to be done on Saturdays, but it has to be internal work inside the house. No work allowed on Sundays. I think we have a speaker to the podium. Why don't you voice your view, speaker?
All right, Sarah Hudson again.
Okay.
So this was my agenda item for city council, and this came up. I've thought about it in multiple circumstances, but it really came up when Google Fiber was outside my bedroom window at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning. And I went, they're not supposed to be working today. What is going on? And apparently the mayor had given approval for utility work on weekends, including Sundays. But there are other things that happen, and we don't have a definition of construction in our code that I could find. So when you say construction has to happen between these hours, what is the extent of construction? And what can you or can you not do on the weekends? So this list was not supposed to be all-inclusive the way I had written it up. It's supposed to be in parentheses, and it's like, such as these things. Because the police had brought up at the council meeting roof installation and repair as another thing. Is that allowed on the weekends? You know, and to me, tree trimming, I mean, all the things that are really noisy, are those, do we want to allow those on the weekends? Do we not want to allow, if you can't do construction on a new home build, that makes noise on the weekends? Can you have a tree crew coming in, making, noise with their grinders and chainsaws all day long? Can you have a roofing crew next door replacing a whole roof on the weekends? We just need to be clear in our code what is and is not required, because I got a bunch of text messages going, is this okay? Why are they making, why is Google Fiber, or why is this noise going on? And people don't know. So they don't know what's allowed, when they should call the police to complain, what they just have to put up with because it's okay. So we just wanted better clarity on what is and is not allowed between 7 and 7 during the week and, on weekends.
Are these 2 pages from our code? Real quick?
Yeah.
Does, one thing, it doesn't define construction, but it does define nuisance. And certain types of construction and demolition are considered a nuisance if they're done outside of the parameters spelled out here very specifically. It seemed, my question is, does the city allow utility work to be done on weekends?
If it's done in an emergency state.
Except for emergencies, obviously.
Or
Yeah.
with approval of the mayor,
So it's not
I
done on
think-
weekends unless it's an emergency?
or approval of the mayor.
Okay, and I
Right,
would think
so-
Google Fiber installation, which is a utility, is not done
Was-
on an emergency.
Was not an
basis.
emergency,
now.
that had approval of the mayor. So that's what was thinking, that we needed to have guidance on what we allow the mayor to approve also.
Are you,
Because
are you saying that we should override the mayor on this, or take away that authority, or?
I think we should have parameters so that people are clear what is allowed and what is not allowed. And if there's a water break, I want to make sure that, that they're out there
emergency.
repairing that on Sunday morning at 8 o'clock if that's when they need to fix it, or, Saturday night or whenever it needs to be fixed.
Right, and an emergency, if a tree falls down on your house and you need to have some roof work done to protect your house from rain, it can be done on an emergency basis on the weekend.
But I'm just saying, right now, we don't have a definition of
We do have a
construction.
definition of things that can be done, right? Minor construction. So we have exceptions to prohibited days of construction and demolition, and it lists a number of things that are minor construction and are therefore allowed, right?
But we don't define what's construction.
Well, we define
Right.
what is not considered construction and is allowed.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
it's
think
sort of a backhanded definition.
when we don't
I
have a
think it's not
definition,
clear.
we look at Webster Dictionary.
Actually, item 3 under F3, under emergency work or work on public, utilities, does say emergency work or work on public service utilities, or work in the interest of, may be approved by a city administrator or his designee is permitted. So that means the city administrator or the mayor does have the ability to approve utility work that's not emergency
Right,
on weekends.
right.
So we would be
Yeah.
taking away
Yeah,
something that's in the ordinance.
I guess my question is this really driven only by the inconvenience that we're suffering with Google? Or is it bigger than that, really? I mean, if it weren't for Google, well, let me ask it that way. If it weren't for the Google construction that is going on currently, would this even come up? Or would we have been satisfied with the way things are?
That was the trigger that caused me to put it on the council agenda, but I have had experience where there have been homes being built, they were doing demo and the crew was still there at midnight on a weekend, and my
But they're
dog
not
is
allowed.
having it.
But we know, but we have an ordinance that says they're not allowed to do that.
So we can
Right.
call the police if that's
To
going
all the
on.
police,
yeah.
yeah.
Right, but we also don't have a clear definition of what, like with landscaping. If you have a landscape crew out there, not cutting your grass, but installing a new landscape, or putting in, like I said, the tree trimming, or that we just don't have a good definition. And I have had people complain to me over the years about, why are they doing this on the weekend? Is this allowed? And the police don't have a real good definition for what they're supposed to be enforcing.
This specifically says we allow landscaping on the weekend.
Yes.
It says, landscaping or planting, provided such activities, that no such activities creates a nuisance condition related to noise, traffic, odor, dust, or other conditions, and is not in violation of any other city ordinance. I mean, somebody's gonna have to make that judgment call.
Right, nuisance is very hard to enforce.
But-
Like, in whose opinion is it a nuisance?
Yeah. The police that were called out.
I'm a little afraid of this. We have a lot of words here that talk about what's allowed and what's not allowed, and the times that they're allowed to be happen, and so on. And I don't know how much more specific we can get. If we need a definition of construction, I guess we can do that. But I would be afraid that we wouldn't include everything that needed to be included. I sat down with my wife today and I said, look at this, what do you think? What else can we do here that you think would make a difference? And she said, I don't see anything else that can be done. So there's at least two of us in the Bench household who are having trouble trying to figure out what we're supposed to do with this.
Can you just pass a resolution that says we support the mayor in stopping Google Fiber from working on weekends?
We could make a we could say that. We could say that people are a little bit frustrated with all
I'm
the.
still wondering how and why we have Google doing it to begin with. We have
Well,
many
you know,
internet
I
service
think-
providers.
You know, I've read all that stuff on WhatsApp, and I don't think that people are being fair about it. I think that the council really.
Well, I'm saying if we had the benefit of the knowledge we have now, I'm not saying anybody
Yeah,
made a mistake.
yeah.
But with the benefit of the knowledge we have now, I'd say we had good internet already.
Well,
I agree with you. I think this is specific enough.
yeah.
The one thing I've had an issue with is landscape crews coming on the weekend. I mean, I don't think you can limit. I think landscape install doesn't generally cause a lot of noise. And I certainly wouldn't want to restrict the
Yeah.
person who works all week from mowing their lawn if they do it themselves on the weekend. But
Well,
I certainly don't love the crews with 10 guys and 2 blowers.
And
going on
landscape
weekend.
install is a construction project. You gotta get a permit.
We don't have a
Yeah.
landscape
There
permit,
There's no permit for landscape.
Nope, for installing your landscape
No.
no,
on a new build.
no.
I think
Okay.
the biggest abuse of landscaping is those leaf blowers, and I've read where other cities have banned the gas-powered leaf blowers because of all the pollution and noise they cause.
I think that we
just
might
don't
be able
like
to
it on
make
the
a
weekend.
distinction between what a homeowner does and what a hired company, a hired contractor would do. I certainly wouldn't want to keep anybody from mowing their lawn on a
Right.
weekend, right? But,
blowing
but
the
to
blower
Tony's
down.
point, I think that, whenever you have a crew of 10 people coming in there and they're mowing and they're blowing and doing all that stuff at the same time, it's not my fun Saturday. I wish that wouldn't happen, and I'm not sure that specifically is noted here. And maybe that's something we can do. Maybe we can strengthen that wording up a little bit.
Oh,
Could we
limit 'em
say
to-
that, I'm sorry.
Limit them to like not before 10 in the morning?
Well, I was thinking limit them to only Saturday morning. And
Yeah, and I actually
And
prefer
stop
morning as
it.
long as it's not super early because
Yeah.
I don't like to be sitting in,
Between
in
the
the
hours
backyard
of
at 2
9
o'clock
and
in the morning.
12, Saturday morning or something like that. But that gets so specific and trying to
I'm not gonna
enforce
follow. I'm
it,
not
and
like
it's
gonna follow my
just-
sword on it, but I
It's
would.
such a mess.
I've talked with a lot of neighbors and friends who are like, can we ban, the landscape crew from coming on the weekend? It's not the highest issue I'm dealing with in my life at the moment, but it's not something I like either.
I mean, you could make.
What is, Tony?
There's about 100 before that.
You could make a issue saying that activity creates a nuisance.
I think, reading this now, you could probably make that argument.
All right.
Is somebody going to call that on their neighbor? I don't know.
Okay.
You know, I've looked back at old notes and construction noise complaints go back 20, 25 years.
Okay,
I mean-
well, then maybe we can, at least do that. Maybe we can make a motion that says that, you know, landscaping crews on weekends between hours or not at all. Maybe we can do
I
something
mean,
like
I
that.
know the police do enforce the hours. I had a contract.
Yeah, right.
Get a ticket, yeah.
We-
At 5:10 on Friday. yeah.
When we were building our home, somebody was trying to do something, I don't recall exactly what, but they got run off by the police. So I know that, yeah, I know that the ordinance is being followed, or at least, you know, it's trying to be. So, I liked what you were saying, Tony. If you want to turn that into a
I mean,
motion.
you know, having a specific window is, you know, I mean, I'm somewhat sympathetic to the fact that somebody is their landscape person. They say, this is my open time, and, you know, you take that away and they gotta go find somebody new or whatever, but, boy, it's a
And-
bummer when you're,
Yeah.
have some people over for an early dinner and,
Oh, yeah.
and they're going next door. I had for years, neighbor every Saturday, you know, huge crew, trailer, you know, going for
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple hours.
Yeah,
So
it's regular. I
you're
got one
proposing-
on
I'd be,
Friday.
I'd be happy prohibiting it on all Saturdays, just not allowed to do it. Because, you know, the work that is presumably allowed to be done on a Saturday is like inside work that is quiet, that is not bothering the neighbors. And that
That's
falls
it.
outside of that, the landscaping crew falls outside of that definition. You know, you put up enough with it. We retired people are at home all day, and we put up with it every day, except it would be nice if Saturdays were off. So, I wonder if we can do that, turn that into a motion.
Just a question, you're saying just commercial landscaping crews
Yeah.
would not be allowed
Yeah,
to
that's-
work on one particular weekend day?
I think both weekend days.
Both weekend days.
Because otherwise you run
Yeah,
into
yeah,
a
yeah.
problem.
No, I
with-
That is
both
correct,
weekend
yeah,
days,
yeah.
I think that's.
Actually, I like the way you just said that.
Yeah, commercial landscaping crews will not be allowed to work on Saturdays and Sundays.
Is that a motion?
Sounds like a motion made.
Okay, that's my motion.
All right, all
I'll
right,
second it.
Basically
Okay.
Jay's motion.
I'll
Very
second the motion.
all right. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, folks. Lovely meeting. Anybody have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Okay,
Okay,
I second it.
okay. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Anybody want to stay?